20 million? Jian Wushuang was also taken aback. A middle-level spacetime's secret realm actually required 20 million divine power to break the restriction. And it had 9 layers. It hadn't been this difficult to enter the Taishu secret realm back then. It seemed he had indeed underestimated this secret realm. At this moment, Wu's was stepped forward and explained, "A space-time level secret realm is indeed not simple. The secret realms nurtured by the northern spacetime are all cosmic level. Only the realm god continent can nurture space-time level secret realms. It's normal for it to be a bit more difficult. Moreover, the Moro spacetime back then was just a part of the Niantian secret realm and couldn't be considered its core. We can still go there to see some relics." Moro spacetime. Jian Wushuang held his breath. Not only had he crossed spacetime to enter Moro spacetime, but he had also dreamed of Qixin when he walked the single-plank bridge. That spacetime was like his nightmare. Even though only relics remained now, stepping into it again made him extremely excited. "Let's go! Enter the Niantian secret realm." Before entering, he notified everyone except Wutian. However, only Wutian left the cave and entered the Chenkuan Hall. The others weren't very interested. After all, it didn't have much to do with them. The inheritance they had received back then, although from Moro spacetime, hadn't been cultivated for long before they reached the 9 great spacetimes. Hundreds of millions of eras had passed. They had long forgotten some of the inheritance from back then. Now, being able to return was just to take one last look. As for Mieshang, they didn't know much, nor did they have any fear. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing's strength was evident. There was no one in the northern spacetime they feared. Why fear a mere Mieshang? Actually, only Jian Wushuang was a bit worried. The others all thought the same. Hu Qing was no different. In the future, with 20 million divine power, even surpassing 20 million, it was enough to dominate the entire northern spacetime. Even on the realm god continent, they were super powerhouses. Why would they fear a small Mieshang? Buzz! The pyramid swiftly broke through spacetime and rushed into the Niantian secret realm. This scene astonished the forces stationed on the periphery. The pyramid entered the Niantian secret realm. "Quick! Notify Giant Sun Lord Immortal. Inform the Abyssal Lord." Various major forces reported one after another. The super-strong individuals in the pyramid indeed attracted everyone's attention, especially in the abyssal spacetime. They were most wary of the super-strong individuals from the upper spacetime, because the abyssal spacetime concealed a great secret. This was also why the giant peak spacetime always kept an eye on the abyssal spacetime. They've already broken the outer barrier. Many people stood at a distance, watching the pyramid breaking through layer upon layer of barriers. Traversing the demon domain, how did they do it? Countless people were amazed. The Niantian secret realm was like a giant treasure trove to them, but also an extremely dangerous perilous land. But those places, which seemed extremely dangerous to them, were completely crushed by the pyramid. There was no resistance at all. In the Niantian secret realm, the most dangerous were those barriers. These barriers could kill or trap people. They were dead objects. When called the most dangerous, it was actually meant for those strong individuals. For the weak universe masters, the greatest threat in the Niantian secret realm were those Nian beasts. This was also the origin of the name of the secret realm. The Nian beasts. They were unique demonic beasts of the Niantian secret realm. They had absolute intelligence and tribes. Some even established their own sections. In the Niantian secret realm, the Nian beasts were unaffected by the barriers and could move freely. Moreover, they were extremely powerful. They were like the favored children of the Niantian secret realm, enjoying the resources of the mysterious realm exclusively. The deeper the Nian beasts, the stronger they were. And these Nian beasts were gregarious demonic beasts. There had once been an 8th tribulation strong individual who encountered a group of Nian beasts at the 8th tribulation level in the core area, each with divine power exceeding 5 million. That 8th tribulation universe master was so frightened that he turned and ran. Even so, he was still seriously injured. These Nian beasts were both a threat and an opportunity for cultivators. The Niantian secret realm not only produced some special treasures, but the most useful to cultivators were the demon cores of the Nian beasts. These demon cores could be used as the origin source of life treasures, enhance divine power, and even enhance the origin source. Not only that, the skeletal divine bodies of these Nian beasts could also be used to refine treasures. They were simply low-end versions of beast gods. Jian Wushuang was delighted when he learned this through Babata. These demon cores of the Nian beasts could help him enhance his beast god weapons. With this, a second refinement of the beast god weapons would allow Candle Dragon to be elevated to the 9th tribulation level. If all 9 beast god weapons could be elevated to the 9th tribulation level and then combined into one, Jian Wushuang could hardly imagine the power. How far is it to the ruins of Moro space-time? Jian Wushuang looked at the dangerous lands in the sky and realized it was getting more dangerous. Currently, they had already entered the inner perimeter, where the dangers already threatened the 7th tribulation. Most of the 7th tribulation universe masters also roamed here. They could slay Nian beasts and collect some treasures. The power of these barriers was not from some sex ruins but seemed more like naturally formed barriers in the space-time. The more dangerous the place, the more powerful treasures would be born. This was also manipulated by the will of space-time. Everything adhered to a balance. Babata shook his head, performed a series of operations, and said somewhat uncertainly, "Master, I don't have much information, but I can judge that Moro space-time is in the southeast direction, close to the core of the Niantian secret realm. It will take 10 days to reach." "Okay. Be careful, no rush." Jian Wushuang wasn't in a hurry at all. Since they had already arrived, it was better to be cautious. He hadn't taken this place seriously at first, but after arriving, his perspective changed. Even the pyramid couldn't cross, indicating that the core area held great threats. Looking at the void barriers in the ruins, Hu Qing couldn't help but exclaim, "These barriers actually contain the power of space-time. No wonder they are so threatening. The secret realm nurtured by space-time naturally contains the power of space-time. Hu Qing, you will understand when you reach the realm god continent. The power of space-time is actually quite common. However, Brother Wushuang's starry sky power is rare even on the realm god continent. The super strong individuals who master the starry sky power mostly come from super forces in the starry sky, each looking down on us space-time cultivators." Wu Zhuo complained and then looked at Jian Wushuang with envy. Obviously, he was very envious of Jian Wushuang, who mastered the starry sky power, because the starry sky power was too special. Once mastered, it made one an absolute prodigy. The starry sky power. Not all starry sky cultivators could master it. Just like space-time cultivators, few mastered the power of space-time, so it appeared very special. Jian Wushuang did not feel that way. His starry sky power did not come from the starry sky they saw but from his own transformed starry sky. Initially, he had also stolen starry sky power, but after being targeted by a super-powerful individual, he did not dare to use it again. Later, he condensed the origin source of the starry sky by himself, thus fully mastering it. If he guessed correctly, those prodigies who mastered starry sky power likely borrowed their power in the same way he did. Just like the origin source power ordinary cultivators practice with. Both come from the universe origin source or space-time origin source. It's just that those cultivators in the starry sky naturally belong to the starry sky, so it's normal for them to cultivate starry sky power. What he did back then could only be called stealing. Just like the father of Gong Miaoi. Borrowed power, though strong, never truly belonged to oneself. At that time, he was fortunate to enter the starry sky through his heart power. After mastering the extreme Tao, he delved into starry sky power. Good luck. This was Jian Wushuang's conclusion. Bad luck would be like those dangerous places in the sky turning into ruins. In the inner region, they often encountered some Nian beasts. Most were in the 6th tribulation, with the 7th tribulation being rare. Even a Nian beast in the 6th tribulation possessed over 1 million divine power, comparable to an average 7th tribulation realm. Of course, universe masters in the 7th tribulation realm would not fear these Nian beasts. But killing these Nian beasts was extremely difficult, requiring formation setups and ambushes in advance. Just like fishing, cultivators had a hard time walking here, following fixed routes, but Nian beasts did not. Restrictive power posed no threat to them, allowing them to escape freely. Cultivators had no good way to deal with these Nian beasts. Only in the outer region was it easier to kill them, because the restrictions in the outer region had been broken by powerful beings. Losing the protection of restrictions, the Nian beasts, though strong, could not withstand the siege of cultivators. However, the Nian beasts in the outer region were mostly in the third tribulation, and killing them was not very useful. Such high realms. Now, it was time to observe the ruins left by Moro spacetime. He pocketed the demon core and led Wuxia and the others down the pyramid. Everyone, should we split up or walk together? He turned to look at the three people behind him. Seeing the ruins left by Moro spacetime, Wuxia couldn't help but descend onto the pitch-black ground. With a casual grab, he seized a wisp of destructive aura. A trace of sorrow crossed his eyes as he sighed. I'll walk alone for a while. I'll find you later. I won't go with you either. Just notify me when we're leaving. Wuxian's face was cold and stern. Without another word, he disappeared into the void. Wuxia watched this scene, not with sadness but rather with joy. He was, after all, a disciple and descendant of Tongtian Buddha. Seeing those he once followed reach new heights made him happy. He didn't feel that Tongtian Buddha had changed at all after becoming a demon. In that case, I'll wait for you ahead with Wuxia. In the end, it was he and Wuxia who headed deeper into the Moro ruins together. They walked slowly, investigating every spot, hoping to find something useful, or some traces left behind from the past. Unfortunately, the devastation back then was too severe. All that remained was scorched earth. Among the ruins, only a few fragments of supreme treasures were scattered. Jian Wuxia descended onto a relatively intact pillar, picking up a fragment of a supreme treasure from the ground, and lamented, "A universe treasure, reduced to such a state." Supreme treasures could still leave fragments behind, but those cultivators left nothing. Wasn't that even more pitiful? The two continued walking, investigating as they went. In the ruins of Moro spacetime, they didn't even encounter a single Nian beast. How tragic it was. The once great Moro spacetime had turned into a vast expanse of scorched earth, with nothing left. What was Qixin thinking back then? Jian Wuxia looked up at the sky, lost in thought. Unwilling to face the failure of his tribulation, he took the entire Moro spacetime with him to destruction, even reaching some sort of agreement with Mieshang. He surveyed the scorched earth of the entire Moro spacetime. At that time, Qixin's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Half-step 8th Tribulation Realm was already very modest. Looking at these traces, it was at least comparable to the peak of the 8th Tribulation Realm to achieve this. The entire Moro spacetime was destroyed. Virtus! Wuxia clasped his hands together and said calmly, "Brother Wuxia, the destruction here is related to devouring." Jian Wuxia didn't need Wuxia's reminder to see this. If it was simply destroying the spacetime river, he could do it too, but the state after destruction would never be a scorched earth. Casually grabbing a handful of scorched earth, he could see through it that the ashes left behind should have been some kind of material force. If it was destroyed by divine power, the entire Moro spacetime would probably leave nothing behind. It excluded the possibility that Qixin didn't cultivate divine power and only followed the origin source route. Then, if the other party wanted to destroy Moro spacetime, they would also start from the origin source of spacetime. Destroying the origin source of spacetime. Then, at the time of Moro spacetime's destruction, it would be like a dried-up ocean. Water without a source would gradually deplete. What should have been left behind would be a desolate land, not endless scorched earth. Qixin devoured this spacetime. Jian Wuxia put down the scorched earth. It was still as he initially thought. Qixin's fall was not so tragic but purposeful. Wuxia nodded in agreement, thinking similarly, then commented, "It should be to grow quickly, to force rapid growth, and the origin source he cultivated back then, following the origin source route, was probably to devour the spacetime origin source." In the end, he failed and suffered a backlash, ultimately having no choice but to sever his devouring path and then prepare for his aftermath, like Qixin Temple. This speculation seemed reasonable to Jian Wuxia. In their eyes, Qixin was already a petty person. A petty person. How could he give up his path and be unwilling to undergo tribulation? Delusional. Jian Wushuang shook his head with a bitter smile. Qixin back then was indeed delusional. He thought that by devouring the origin source of spacetime, he could become the master of spacetime. In Qixin Temple, the realm described above Universe Master was vaguely the master of spacetime. But when Jian Wushuang reached the upper-level spacetime and broadened his horizons, he found out things weren't that simple. Above the Universe Master, there were currently various gods. To really say there was a master of spacetime, it would be Realm King. He controlled the entire northern spacetime. He was the only one who was the master of spacetime. The remaining superpowerful beings, whether they were those ancient existences in the northern spacetime or the cultivators of the realm god continent, were at most in the ninth tribulation. He didn't know the realms beyond that. Realm King had never mentioned it. Perhaps there was no realm above. Beyond God? Jian Wushuang did not dare to think about it. Before meeting Wes, he might have speculated, but after encountering that monster, he felt he could never surpass him. His word was law. When he said you had to undergo the tribulation, you had to do it. When he said he would erase you, you had to die. How could you surpass that? You used divine power. Others were true gods. The power you used was bestowed upon you by others. Perhaps his vision was limited, and there should be a way to surpass, but it was definitely not in the northern spacetime. Now, he did not dare to think about it anymore. He only felt that Qixin was somewhat pitiful. If he had not spied on the origin source of spacetime, perhaps Qixin could have become a universe master of the eighth tribulation. Then he could have gone to the upstream or upper-level spacetime, broadened his horizons, and maybe even obtained the realm god order, gone to the realm god continent, and still surpassed the eighth tribulation to reach the ninth tribulation. Even if he couldn't reach it, he could have become an eternal existence, first going to the northern spacetime to wait for the birth of the god of life. Why be so obsessed with spacetime, ending up splitting himself and falling, leaving behind so many disasters? Qixin's desire for life might have been even more persistent than Mieshang's. Let's go. After sighing, Jian Wushuang decided to leave. This truth was within his expectations. But it was also something he did not want to believe. Qixin was most likely crippled by Mieshang. What the shadow on the single-log bridge said back then might have been what Qixin said to Mieshang. Zhenling's hatred of the path of devouring originated from Qixin's consciousness. From the depths of his consciousness, he extremely hated devouring. Then the three demon lords Qixin left behind. Shanjun, Gujun, and Emojun were the evil incarnations of Qixin. They also destroyed Qixin's path of devouring. The true spirit was so against it because of Qixin's hatred. Wushuang, should we inform Wuxia? Hu Qing hesitated, thinking if they told Wuxia their speculation, he might have a hard time accepting it. Although Wuxia seemed somewhat shady and not like a good person, judging by his daily attire of a Taoist robe while shouting and killing, he was definitely not a good person. But in his heart, he always held Qixin in high regard. This was also Qixin's charm. So many people were willing to be buried with him. Qixin definitely had extraordinary qualities. Even if he was a villain, he had achieved the extreme, making everyone think he was a god. No need. It's best if he doesn't know about this. Let him wander here alone while we head to the core. I happen to need some Nian Beast Demon cores. Jian Wushuang paused, then continued. If you have nothing to do, you can join me. All right. Hu Qing nodded in agreement. He had nothing to do, and like Jian Wushuang, he came here to see how Qixin ultimately met his end. In the vast scorched earth, the two left together. Wu Tian didn't think as much as Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Finding nothing in the scorched earth, he had already entered the core area. Only Wuxia stood alone before a pillar, silently wiping his tears. That pillar was once the main pillar in a Dao arena. The Dao arena naturally belonged to Qixin. Thinking back to that time, he listened to Dao under this pillar. Although he was only a registered disciple, after every lecture, Qixin would still send him a voice transmission, explaining anything he didn't understand. Now everything was gone. At the peak of the Moro spacetime, although the universe masters were the most respected, Qishan Temple outwardly honored the universe masters, but internally, it revered the emperors. He cared deeply for every emperor. This was why Qishan had so many emperors under his command, not universe masters. The ones closest to Qishan were always those emperors. 18 divine generals, 108 divine messengers, and those disciples. In the scorched earth only Wus were remained. Jian Wushuang and the others had already entered the core of the Niantian secret realm. A land of quicksand? Looking at the heaving quicksand before him, he found the place quite interesting. In the quicksand there were even some whirlpools. These whirlpools could even drag strong practitioners at the 8th tribulation realm into them. However, there was no life-threatening danger. They would only be trapped, as there were some peculiar restrictions beneath the quicksand. Because of this, even the Nian beasts rarely appeared here. The Nian beasts could only be immune to the restrictions, but the quicksand was still extremely dangerous for them. Over the years, there must have been many Nian beasts swallowed by this quicksand, he thought, believing that even those Nian beasts, with intelligence higher than that of practitioners, wouldn't be immune to being swallowed. The quicksand was like a filter, a large net for sifting out Nian beasts. Nian beasts at the 7th tribulation would likely be killed by the quicksand. But the Nian beasts at the 8th tribulation realm would not. They were probably just beneath it. Without restrictions and no other dangers under the quicksand, they could naturally survive. Moreover, the strongest of the human race could only enter this place. Passing through this area of quicksand was too difficult. At most, they could search within the quicksand for the treasures that leaked out. And there were quite a few. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, after merely observing for a moment, discovered some treasures that had leaked out from the quicksand. There were herbs and various kinds of treasures. They emitted dazzling light, but the distance was too far. Even those at the peak of the 8th tribulation did not dare to venture forth. Jian Wushuang had the strength, but not the inclination. He had no interest in these treasures. Hu Qing felt the same. He had helped Realm King greatly, and the treasures he had gained probably weren't any less than those here. Let's go down. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate and directly flashed into the quicksand. The immense suction force caused his figure to pause, almost falling from mid-air. The suction force exceeded millions of divine power. But there was no need to directly use the super-eternal Antient transformation. While in the midstream spacetime, he directly took out the beast god weapon. The tribulation armor on his body also began to operate. With a base divine power of 3 million plus 2 million from the tribulation armor, his base divine power instantly reached 5 million. Now, using the beast god weapon, there was no limit anymore. His divine body could be freely amplified. However, the beast god weapon had its own limit for him. At most, it could amplify his divine power tenfold. Amplified by more than 5 million. His divine power reached tens of millions. It perfectly countered the suction force, allowing him to walk freely. As for Hu Qing, with a base divine power of 15 million, entering the quicksand area was as easy as walking without any threat. His divine power aura didn't change, making him seem like an ordinary person. The surrounding quicksand power encircled them and immediately avoided them. This was the aura of a strong person, an incomparably powerful person, would condense such an aura upon arrival. Jian Wushuang looked on with some envy. If only his basic divine power could also reach 15 million. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the 8th tribulation realm. Every time Hu Qing practiced, it seemed as if there were no opportunities, or rather it appeared ordinary. Yet he often exploded with strength that was incomprehensible to ordinary people, especially the peak secret technique of his future body. It was definitely the strongest secret technique Jian Wushuang had ever seen. It was comparable to his super-eternal ancient transformation. No wonder he was a super-strong person who had grasped the heavenly way. Although Jian Wushuang was envious, he still asked with concern, "Hu Qing, how is your understanding of that supreme treasure? To my shame, I've only grasped a little. My own cultivation realm is still somewhat low." Hu Qing was extremely humble. He casually took out the chessboard and continued, "I almost forgot. This chessboard can also play a role here." "Oh!" Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. He had long since looked past Hu Qing's humility. When Hu Qing said he had grasped a little, it absolutely meant he had grasped most of it, so it was not surprising. But the chessboard being able to function here made him a bit curious. Give it a try. Speaking of which, it's a bit embarrassing. When I got it back then, I couldn't figure out anything. This was something he would only say to someone close. When the sky-sight heavenly chessboard fell into his hands, his greatest achievement was probably finding a successor for it. He himself had only gotten a tribulation armor. And those early chess pieces on the sky-sight heavenly chessboard, which had been quite helpful to him. But as for the function of this chessboard, he had no clue. Hu Qing held the chessboard in one hand, pointed with a finger, and softly chanted, "Heaven's will." As soon as the words were spoken, the gigantic shadow of the chessboard descended. Buzz! One by one, the shadows of the chess pieces, holding various flags, were distributed around. Hu Qing's true form became incomparably majestic, like a god descending. Commanders, heed my order. Stabilize the 4 directions of spacetime. As you command. The 4 chess pieces cupped their hands in salute, then orderly moved to their positions, placing the flags into the grooves of the chessboard. The land of quicksand became still at this moment. All the quicksand stopped moving. The attraction force disappeared as well. What? Jian Wushuang's eyes widened in amazement. This chessboard can even seal spacetime? Hu Qing nodded calmly and said, "That's right. It can maintain a piece of spacetime. On this chessboard, not only can it seal spacetime, but it can also dispatch these chess pieces to battle." Dispatching chess pieces. This didn't surprise Jian Wushuang, as he had thought of this before but didn't know how to use it. He only knew a stupid method, which was to extract the origin source of the chess pieces, refine them into puppets to help him fight. But in Hu Qing's hands, he could mobilize all the chess pieces. And judging by the looks of it, these chess pieces weren't weak either. It was still the same division as before. God, commander, general, soldier. Back then, he had absorbed all the origin sources of these chess pieces and used them to refine his own origin source and attempt fusion. Now it seemed he had taken the wrong path. Brother Wushuang, let these chess pieces guard this place. Let's go down together and deal with those Nian beasts. Before Hu Qing finished speaking, he felt a tremor. In the vortex of quicksand, powerful divine power was surging. Jian Wushuang exclaimed, "It's the Nian beasts." After spacetime was frozen, the quicksand became dead matter. Unable to flow naturally, there was no more attraction force. Those Nian beasts that had been sucked into the quicksand were now frantically reversing up the vortex, trying to rush out. In this way, it also gave Jian Wushuang and the others a piece of information. There should be a dead end below. If there were other exits, these Nian beasts wouldn't be in such a hurry. Whoosh! The next moment, the sand grains in the vortex were scattered, and the herd of Nian beasts rushed out. An 8th tribulation realm herd of Nian beasts? Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with surprise. Moreover, it seemed that each one's divine power exceeded 10 million. There were at least 100 of them. If they charged out of the Niantian secret realm, the entire middle-level spacetime would be doomed. Fortunately, these Nian beasts only adapted to the Niantian secret realm. Otherwise, it would indeed be a great disaster. But for Jian Wushuang, it was a rare supreme treasure. The beast god weapon receded from his body, and a blue aura rose from him. Super eternal ancient transformation. Jian Wushuang directly unleashed his power, ready for a major battle. However, before he could mobilize his origin source Dao Arena, Hu Qing stopped him. "Brother Wushuang, there's no need for such trouble." Jian Wushuang felt a bit embarrassed. "Let's fight together. It's not like I can't handle these wild beasts." No. Hu Qing shook his head and corrected him. "Why wouldn't we need to fight?" Jian Wushuang was puzzled by Hu Qing's words. "No need to fight?" "Exactly." Hu Qing nodded and pointed to the chessboard. "Listen to my command." Jian Wushuang looked over. Only then did he understand that Hu Qing wanted to use the pieces on the chessboard to deal with these Nian beasts. But it was a whole group of Nian beasts. Each of them was at the 8th tribulation. He doubted the chess pieces could withstand them. Then he thought that Hu Qing might want to show off in front of him, so he didn't stop him. He would watch how Hu Qing controlled the pieces. If it didn't work, he would intervene. He couldn't just let Hu Qing exert all the effort while he held onto the treasures. Buzz! The chess pieces around moved again. Those pieces that suppressed spacetime each held a piece. This time, the pieces that appeared held standard long knives, their cold light flashing, extremely terrifying. Jian Wushuang then realized that there was another set of pieces. Moreover, these pieces had a divine power aura but no origin source. The pieces marked with the character for soldier had divine power reaching 5 million. The pieces marked with the character for general reached tens of millions. However, those pieces marked with the character for commander, though rare and seemingly of higher rank, had no divine power. He turned to look at the pieces marked with the character for God. There were still 3 of them, but the divine power they contained reached an infinite level. He couldn't see through them. Jian Wushuang was full of astonishment. I can't see through the pieces marked with the character for God. Hu Qing explained, Brother Wushuang, these pieces marked with the character for God should be embodiments of divine power. I can't see through them either. Embodiments. Jian Wushuang then understood. Originally, he thought Hu Qing wanted the pieces marked with the character for general to fight and kill the Nian beasts. But it would still be slow, because their divine power was the same as that of the Nian beasts. Under the command of the handsome chess piece, even the soldier chess pieces could join the battle. Moreover, they fought skillfully. The number of chess pieces was about the same as the Nian beasts, yet they could coordinate their attacks. The number of Nian beasts was more than they had expected. After reaching a valley, they discovered an extraordinary treasure. This treasure was an auxiliary supreme treasure, an origin source, divine power origin source. It was actually nurtured on a tree. To avoid damaging the tree during battle, Hu Qing suppressed the spacetime, and Jian Wushuang personally collected it. Then, using the chess pieces, they once again besieged the Nian beasts. Haha, willows seem to bring good luck. The Wanlu divine tree was also so miraculous. Jian Wushuang carefully stored it away, feeling great. He wanted to place this willow tree in the Chenquan Hall of the pyramid. Then, sitting under the tree to cultivate would be twice as effective. Although the pyramid had an auxiliary function for cultivation, it only worked for metal lifeforms and was of no use to them. With this willow tree, he could even transport the origin source within the willow tree to various caves. But doing so would eliminate the benefit of cultivating under the tree. Still, it was better than nothing. This willow tree is indeed extraordinary. If it were for a sect, it could completely elevate it to another level. Even Hu Qing couldn't help but praise it. Speaking of the sect, Jian Wushuang actually had this idea. If Miashang was dealt with, what would happen to the inheritors in Qishan Temple? They couldn't just disband on the spot. They still had a mission: to restore the glory of Qishan Temple, to make Qishan great again. Right now, Qishan was a joke. Greatness had become a joke. But this momentum couldn't be broken, and they were already prepared to keep this matter a secret. At that time, they could use the excuse of restoring Qishan Temple to gather all the strong together. Unify the lower spacetime, then rush to the middle spacetime. Break the barrier of the spacetime river. Rush all the way to the upper spacetime. As for going to Realm God Continent, he had thought about it, and with the threat of Shilu, he had no choice but to go. But he still had many things undone in his hometown of northern spacetime. What initially seemed like a fantasy had to be completed. Once Miashang was dealt with, they could prepare one by one. After killing the Nian beast horde again, the two rested for a while. Wu Zua and Wu Tian transmitted coordinates to them, waiting for the two to come and join them. As for the pyramid, Jian Wushuang had already put it away. No one was willing to come out. Everyone was desperately cultivating, unwilling to waste time. Jian Wushuang was the same. He collected these demon cores to refine his beast god weapon in the future. However, after entering the Niantian secret realm, he wanted to collect the lost beast god weapons but had no clue at all. Logically, he should have felt the power of the beast god weapons within the spacetime of the Niantian secret realm. Yet, There was no response. Most likely they had been obtained by other practitioners. Or they were completely destroyed. Not a trace of origin source was left. Brother Wuxia, you too sure can run. Entering this deep, Wuxia, who arrived first, couldn't help but exclaim as soon as he landed. This Xianxia's secret realm is really strange. The scenery in the core area is like a patchwork. Sometimes wind, sometimes fire. It's truly uncomfortable. This remark caught Jian Wuxuang's attention. Patchwork. It was only then that he thought of the dangerous places they encountered along the way. It was indeed as Wuxia had said. Some places were very obvious. One step away was a sea of fire. A step back was an ice field. You two wait here for Wutian. I will go ahead and take a look. Jian Wuxuang, thinking of this, set off immediately. His figure flickered continuously, and he was able to break through the prohibitions they encountered. Boom! He broke through the prohibitions all the way, directly entering the junction outside the valley. It was a barren land. Let alone treasures. There wasn't even a place to catch a breath. He stepped in. Looking at the junction, he fell into deep thought. The Moro space-time in the southeast direction is the same. His eyes flashed as he noticed something suspicious. He originally thought that the Xianxia's secret realm was condensed from the entire Moro space-time, but after arriving at the core, he realized it wasn't that simple. The Moro space-time was merely a part of the Xianxia's secret realm. Moreover, its location was not correct. Back then, the Moro space-time was not here. It was in a dried-up space-time river. The Xianxia's secret realm seemed to possess an attraction, drawing all secret realms to merge into one place, to provide a habitat for the Nian beasts. Thinking of this, he extended his mental power, continuously spreading deeper. At a certain point, he stopped, because the restriction force there exceeded 20 million. Indeed, he frowned and retracted his mental power. Just touching that restriction, he noticed that it was somewhat different from the ones he had encountered before, because that restriction seemed to have just appeared. Moreover, the restriction isolated spacetime. At the core of the Xianxia's secret realm, there was definitely some secret hidden. However, entering it posed great danger. He suspected that, in the deepest part, there was a Nian beast that had mastered the secret techniques of cultivators. Otherwise, it would not have been able to seal spacetime. Even the pyramid could not pass through. Their attempt to enter the core was difficult. Jian Wuxuang returned to the canyon, and Wutian arrived at the same time. The group did not notice that a hidden eye was always watching their direction and route. Moreover, around them, various dangerous terrains were constantly shifting, like a puzzle constantly moving. When Wutian arrived, he mentioned encountering a thunder canyon according to the route given by Jian Wuxuang, but Jian Wuxuang did not encounter it. Everyone couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Caw-caw. A crow perched on a treetop, cawing mockingly at the group. The entity manipulating all this could see Jian Wuxuang and the others' actions through the crow. In the deepest part of the Xianxia's secret realm, within a dark forest. The pitch-black forest was devoid of any light. In the depths of the forest there was a cave mansion. Flocks of crows flew out from this place, monitoring the entire Xianxia's secret realm. At this moment, a Nian beast at the complete stage 8th tribulation cautiously walked towards the cave mansion. Upon entering the cave mansion, there was a faint light. These light sources came from the red eyes flickering on the cave walls. If viewed closely, one could see that the owners of these eyes were crows. The Nian beast stopped in the depths of the cave mansion and rasped in its unique language, "King, they are still planning to move forward. Send another team of Nian beasts to lead them into the Flame Mountain." The one called King revealed a hint of flame power through the red light, but no features were visible. The Nian beast, without any hesitation, turned and left. Another team of Nian beasts? Nian 6? Jian Wuxuang was still unaware that their route had long been manipulated, like puppets on strings. Actually, after they realized something was wrong, they were all ready to leave, because the Xianxia's secret realm was not under their control. Moreover, none of them lacked treasures. There was no need to take risks. The king of the Niantian secret realm did not realize that his unnecessary actions would bring him immense trouble. Brother Wushuang, let's leave now. Hearing what you said, I also feel this place is eerie and a bit scary. Wu's shrank his neck, suddenly becoming timid. Jian Wushuang broke the twig he was holding and stood up. Let's go, right now. He also felt the sensation of being watched but could not pinpoint the observer. It was definitely a stronger entity than them. Staying here would indeed be dangerous. It was better to leave early. After all, they had enough demon cores. Hu Qing looked deeply into the distance, unable to discern anything different, just feeling a sense of danger around them. Leaving was indeed a wise choice. Humph! Wu Tian expressed his disapproval of their decision, saying coldly, "A small secret realm scares you like this. Yet you boast about being invincible in the northern space-time. How laughable." Wu's face reddened, and he retorted angrily, "If you're so brave, go ahead. I won't accompany you. All right, let's leave now." Jian Wushuang, for safety, directly took out the pyramid, preparing to take everyone away in the pyramid. This would also avoid the first wave of attacks. After boarding the pyramid, they did not follow the original route back but followed Babata's route to leave the core of the Niantian secret realm. Once out of the core, they would make further plans. But there was no need for additional plans. If they left smoothly, they would head straight to the downstream spacetime. Buzz! The pyramid broke through restrictions all the way, trying to leave the Niantian secret realm via the shortest route. Jian Wushuang, concerned, stood at the forefront of the sky screen, observing the situation outside. With a thought, he sensed a powerful presence within the restriction ahead. Before he could react, the pyramid charged in at an incredible speed. Be careful! Boom! The pyramid crashed violently against the restriction, creating only a small breach. However, the pyramid still squeezed through the breach and entered the world within the restriction. From the outside, the inside of the restriction looked like a lush green grassland. But once inside, they realized it was actually a sea of fire. There was also a towering mountain constantly spewing flames. It's a group of Nian beasts. Jian Wushuang noticed Nian beasts active at the top of the flaming mountain and let out a sigh of relief. However, there was an unusual aura among the group of Nian beasts. The others noticed this too. Wu's exclaimed, "The complete stage of 8th Tribulation Realm, 18 million units of divine power." Among the Nian beasts, there was one with a high crown, standing proudly at the peak of the flaming mountain. This was the strongest Nian beast Jian Wushuang had ever encountered. It actually possessed 18 million units of divine power. Stronger than the complete stage 8th Tribulation Realm. It was no longer comparable to a beast god. It was a living beast god. Jian Wushuang felt a bit excited. But the threat still lingered around. He didn't dare to make a move. Not because of fear of danger, but fear of wasting time. Their goal was to return to the downstream spacetime, not to make stops along the way. Moreover, everyone had plenty of treasures. It was only Jian Wushuang who needed the Nian beast's core. He couldn't let this minor issue affect the bigger mission. Forget it. Dealing with it would probably take some time. Let's move on. Wushuang, give me the time it takes to burn an incense stick, and I can help you deal with it. Hu Qing's eyes were filled with battle intent. It was clear he wanted to help Jian Wushuang take down this Nian beast. Hu Qing and Wu knew the most about the beast god weapon. They understood how much it would help Jian Wushuang. Wu, wanting to see more of Hu Qing's combat prowess, urged, "Brother Wushuang, don't hesitate. It's just killing a Nian beast leader. It's a simple task for Hu Qing. Don't worry, it won't take long. TSK. The threat you're talking about can't be just this Nian beast, right?" Wu Tian mocked from the side. He thought they were being overly cautious, like being scared of shadows, afraid at the slightest threat. Jian Wushuang extended his senses, probing around. Finding nothing unusual, he lowered his guard, thinking nothing could escape his notice. Besides, the feeling of being watched seemed to have vanished once they entered this place. "All right." He nodded towards Hu Qing. "Be careful." Hu Qing, filled with confidence, responded, Don't worry. With a swift movement, he left the pyramid. Reappearing, two figures of Hu Qing appeared in the sky. A future body. The last time in the primordial black heaven, Wuxia and Wutian were too far away to see clearly. This time, witnessing it had a massive impact on them. Divine power over 20 million. Wuxia couldn't help but exclaim. Wutian, standing nearby, clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. How did he cultivate to be able to create such a defiant secret technique? 23 million divine power. Jian Wushuang swallowed hard. It had surpassed the limit of life-bearing capacity. This was somewhat beyond ordinary. When divine power reached 20 million, the law rules of the northern spacetime would suppress it. Hu Qing on Flame Mountain was also a bit surprised. He had only used half of his future self, yet it could unleash 23 million divine power. This place seemed to have no restrictions on him. Nor did he feel any suppression from the northern spacetime. This made him frown. Nevertheless, he acted quickly, smashing the entire Flame Mountain with just one punch. The Nian beast was also extremely surprised. It had been sent by the king to attract cultivators, originally thinking that those cultivators would leave in a hurry upon seeing it. Unexpectedly, these people were so brave. Moreover, the white-robed monk leader in front of them was so powerful. One punch destroyed the entire Flame Mountain. The sky was instantly filled with red fireballs, continuously bombarding the ground. King, I am far from being his opponent. Nian 6 was completely panicked. He wanted to use the restriction to leave. But the current Hu Qing was too powerful. The future body already had the combat power of the 9th tribulation realm. Looking at the fleeing Nian 6, he pointed a finger, directly killing Nian 6. Only a demon core remained. Inside the pyramid, Jian Wushuang and the others had their mouths wide open. Seeing Hu Qing's terrifying methods, cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. Luckily, he was on their side. If an opponent was this strong, they wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Snap! Hu Qing used one hand to absorb the demon core from the sky into his hand. The future body disappeared. Only the original body returned to the pyramid. Hu Qing, you can actually break the northern spacetime's restriction. Your future body is truly extraordinary. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but praise. His super-eternal ancient transformation used the power of the starry sky and should be able to break this law rule. But the power Hu Qing used wasn't the power of the starry sky. Yet he could still break the restriction of this spacetime. Hu Qing, after hearing this, showed a puzzled expression like everyone else, then shook his head. I don't know why I suddenly broke the limit either. In the past, I couldn't break this limit at all, and just now I only used half of my power. I didn't expect to reach 23 million divine power. Half! Jian Wushuang and the others gasped again. Terrifying. Half was already this powerful. The full strength of the future body might reach 30 million. That would be double the basic divine power. Similar to Jian Wushuang's super-eternal ancient transformation. A defiant secret technique. This time, Wuxia was the first to calm down. He quickly interrupted everyone, waving his hand. Wait, could it be that this place is not restricted by the northern spacetime, so Hu Qing could easily break through? Hu Qing's eyes flickered, nodding. I think so too. Could only be this possibility. Breaking the spacetime limit was extremely difficult. First, the northern spacetime had a restriction. The limit of divine power that life could bear was just over 20 million. You could reach the limit, but you couldn't break it. If you truly broke it, it would be the legendary power breaking through 10,000 laws. Hu Qing breaking the restriction so easily just now clearly wasn't that. It was due to this place. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang licked his lips. Swoosh! His figure rushed out. In the apocalyptic scene, he looked up and roared, clenching his fists. Divine power erupted instantly, constantly rising. 3 cosmic dojos descended simultaneously. Super-eternal ancient transformation. He gritted his teeth, thinking of unleashing his divine power to its limit to see if he could surpass the boundaries here. The base divine power, combined with the tribulation armor, reached directly to 5 million. The super-eternal ancient transformation doubled it, reaching 15 million. The dojo increased it by 60%. That's an increase of 9 million divine power. My super-eternal ancient transformation has indeed reached the perfect level. Feeling the arcs of electricity from the divine power aura. Incredibly powerful, easily piercing through spacetime. The divine power reached an astonishing 24 million. Even spacetime trembled. He could now easily shatter the entire Niantian secret realm. Jian Wushuang felt an unprecedented strength. His whole being was extremely comfortable. This was his first time bursting out so perfectly. Under normal circumstances, if his divine power could reach 18 million, even if the super-eternal ancient transformation reached its perfect level, he could only contend with super-strong beings of 20 million divine power. Now he could perfectly burst out, reaching 24 million divine power. Inside the pyramid, besides Hu Qing, everyone else was also incredibly astonished. Astonished at Jian Wushuang's strength. He could easily surpass 20 million. Jian Wushuang can also do it. Wu Tian gritted his teeth, staring at Jian Wushuang outside, feeling unprecedented pressure. That aura was enough to suppress them. Wu Zhuo was amazed at the wonder of this place. It wasn't subject to the constraints of the northern spacetime. There must be a huge secret here. Hu Qing's eyes also narrowed slightly. More surprised than them were the ones from the dark forest in the core area of the Niantian secret realm. When the king saw Hu Qing's divine power surpass 20 million, he gasped, and then saw Jian Wushuang's divine power also surpassing 20 million. He couldn't sit still anymore. Notify Nian 9 to attack these people at any cost, eliminate them. From the pitch-black cave mansion, waves of cold wind blew. A herd of Nian beasts moved out in the dark, only their eyes showing. Each Nian beast's divine power surpassed 20 million. After absorbing the power of the abyss for so long, now is the time to act. They must be eliminated. The giant face on the throne showed a hint of disgust, saying viciously, "Damn humans! Since you discovered the special nature of this place, you all must die." Buzz! Countless crows flew out from the cave mansion. The king in the face shadow also left the cave. To ensure nothing went wrong, he decided to go personally. Because Hu Qing and Jian Wushuang had great potential, and there were no constraints here, he feared they were hiding their true strength. Jian Wushuang had to take action personally. The king of the Niantian secret realm. Also the king of the Nian beasts. Niantian, Flame Mountain. It had been completely destroyed. At this moment, Jian Wushuang and his companions were still marveling at the peculiarities of this place, unaware that they had provoked a formidable expert. Now, Jian Wushuang was contemplating whether to change his strategy. He was quite intrigued and wanted to stay and investigate further. Isolate the northern spacetime and unleash more than 20 million divine power. He took a deep breath and voiced a bold idea. "Everyone, this place is of great importance. Should we take the risk? Let's do it." Wu Tian was the first to step forward, strongly agreeing. He had just tried to unleash his full power, and his divine power had reached 15 million. This was already at the level of complete stage 8th tribulation. Yet he was still a universe master of the 7th tribulation's level. Such a great opportunity. How could he not take the risk? Wu Zhuo's expression was grim. He knew more and naturally thought more. "Brother Wushuang, you're not thinking of..." Wu Zhuo didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. No one was a fool. This place could break through the northern spacetime's restrictions. So, could they acquire or spread this ability? He thought of the Niantian secret realm continuously absorbing nearby secret realms, becoming a spacetime secret realm as vast as a giant spacetime river. If the Niantian secret realm covered the entire northern spacetime, there would be no need to wait for Danbao to elevate the northern spacetime's life level. They could directly achieve perfection and even give birth to 9th tribulation experts. At the very least, they could take control of this place and be invincible here. But first, they had to master the entire Niantian secret realm. Then they could add this special power to themselves. If the enemy also reached the Niantian secret realm, there would be no restrictions. Everyone would be on equal footing. At this moment, Jian Wushuang thought a lot, but ultimately settled on one idea. "Wu Zhuo, Have you ever thought about transferring this place's special power to your own origin source DAO arena? Wouldn't we be invincible and truly sweep through the northern spacetime? Jian Wushuang became more excited as he spoke, pointing downstream. You know the threat of Mieshang. Even at our current level, it's difficult to deal with Mieshang. If we can get the secrets of this place, what would Mieshang be? This wasn't an exaggeration. The threat of Mieshang was indeed great. When they left the Qishan temple, Mieshang had already transformed into the god of destruction temple. This was similar to Danbao transforming into the Immortal temple. Danbao could suppress Qi Juxiao effortlessly. If Mieshang could do the same, returning to face him would be suicidal even at their current level. But Wuxia was still hesitant because this violated the laws of the northern spacetime, and he was still the Realm King's direct disciple. Following Jian Wushuang to do things outside the laws of the northern spacetime indeed made him uneasy. Hu Qing took the initiative to persuade at this moment. Brother Wuxia, this place is also part of the northern spacetime. Eliminating it might even be a merit. He finished and nodded at Jian Wushuang, clearly agreeing with his idea and actions. 3-1, there's nothing more to say. If you don't want to do it, just pretend you didn't see it. Jian Wushuang was too lazy to persuade further and issued an ultimatum. Actually, Hu Qing had a point. Exploring this place was solving a problem for the northern spacetime. If they didn't explore and left now to inform the Realm King, he might not have any solution either. Eventually, they would still rely on them. No one knew why Wuxia suddenly became cautious. Perhaps he truly cared for the beings of the world. He felt uneasy not informing Realm King about such a significant matter in advance. But he also had his own thoughts. When Wuxia heard they wanted to exclude him, he quickly said, I agree. I didn't say I didn't. Just regardless of the outcome, we must report this to Realm King Brother Wushuang. We are cultivators, and while we consider our own power, we must also think about the safety of the entire northern spacetime. Brother Wuxia is right. I agree with that. Hu Qing nodded in agreement. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and stared intently at Wuxia, creating a tense atmosphere. Seeing the terrifying look in Jian Wushuang's eyes, Wuxia was startled and quickly retreated, saying, Brother Wushuang, this is just a small matter. You're not going to kill me to silence me, are you? Smack. Jian Wushuang took a step forward, coming face to face with Wuxia, staring into his eyes. His voice turned exceptionally cold as he said, I didn't expect your ambitions to be this great. After scaring Wuxia a bit, he retracted his stern expression and continued, I also agree with this matter. I'll inform the Realm King afterwards. Hearing this, Wuxia finally breathed a sigh of relief. Babata, change direction and head towards the core of the Nianshan secret realm. I want to traverse the entire Nianshan secret realm. As soon as he finished speaking, the pyramid broke through time and space, along with those restrictions, and rushed in the opposite direction. However, they also knew that they might not have control over their direction. Searching like this might not lead them anywhere. So, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing destroyed the restrictions along the way. By doing so, the core area of the Nianshan secret realm couldn't operate anymore, naturally opening up the route. What they didn't know was that, even flying aimlessly, they could encounter the manipulator behind all this. Because the Nian god had quietly descended. Take action. Boom. The pyramid, which was shuttling through time and space, encountered a towering Nian beast head-on, which slapped it away with one hit. The divine power just displayed definitely exceeded 20 million divine power. Jian Wushuang was also taken aback. The pyramid, out of control, flew backward, crashing into several dangerous places before coming to a steady stop. If it's attacking us on its own, it saves us the trouble of searching for it. He wasn't surprised by the divine power that the Nian beast unleashed. He and Hu Qing immediately left the pyramid. Wu Tian and Wuxia stayed in the pyramid, as they couldn't participate in battles of this level. Hu Qing, don't reveal our true strength. It seems they've been targeting us for a long time. Jian Wushuang reminded him through voice transmission. The distant Nian beast was also staring at them. However, it didn't attack again, nor did it move. This puzzled Jian Wushuang. At this moment, Hu Qing's eyes flickered, and he made a shocking discovery. Brother Wushuang, something's not right. Although these Nian beasts have different levels of divine power, I can feel that their life levels are the same. On the way, Hu Qing had a thorough understanding of killing so many Nian beasts. Jian Wushuang also raised his eyebrows and used his mind power to actively investigate. He did not find anything different. Was there no difference from those ordinary Nian beasts on the periphery? That meant the life level of the Nian beasts had not changed, but their divine power could vary. This, impossible. Jian Wushuang hurriedly took out 2 demon cores. One was from the beast Hu Qing had slain on Flame Mountain. The other was obtained in the Flowing Sand domain. The two were originally vastly different, but after arriving here, he found that the 2 demon cores were identical, containing the same amount of power. In other words, the strength of the Nian beasts did not depend on the strength of divine power but on the terrain. In a special area, they would become stronger. The Nian beasts on the periphery had the combat power of the 3rd and 4th Tribulation Realm. But in the inner area, there were those with the combat power of the 7th Tribulation. It was not because they were individually stronger. It was due to their location. If all the Nian beasts were at the core, they would have the combat power of the 8th Tribulation Realm. So miraculous. No wonder. He had underestimated these Nian beasts. Currently, he could see that the core of the Niantian secret realm was likely controlled by someone or a powerful alien race. Otherwise, they would not be surrounded. TSK, I was wondering why there were groups of Nian beasts at the 8th Tribulation Realm level here, and why they didn't directly guard the periphery of the Niantian secret realm. It turns out that when they reached the periphery, their power was reduced. Jian Wushuang moved his wrist, finding the situation increasingly interesting. This place was roughly the core of the entire Niantian secret realm, but it was not the center. In other words, moving forward, they might encounter stronger Nian beasts, possibly even exceeding 30 million divine power, just like Akatsuki in the 10,000 Willows divine tree. But they were also different from before. Jian Wushuang swung his wrist and shouted, "Leave this Nian beast to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around him began to rise. His figure flashed, shattering space-time, and appeared directly in front of the Nian beast. At full burst, surpassing 20 million divine power, there were no constraints. It was extremely exhilarating. Standing in front of the Nian beast, although his divine body had already transformed into his own form, towering and immense. But it was still a head shorter than the Nian beast. Gulp! The Nian beast's eyes also contained intelligence. Feeling Jian Wushuang's vast divine power, its heart sank. Jian Wushuang, however, smiled slightly, lowered his head, and raised his arms suddenly, clenching both fists, and charged fiercely, transforming into a roaming dragon. The blue divine power filled the entire space. His fists turned into dragons, directly crashing the Nian beast into the sky. He didn't give the opponent any chance to breathe, lifted his leg, and kicked the Nian beast's head hard. This blow directly caused cracks in the opponent's divine body. Ah! Despite such a fierce attack, Jian Wushuang did not relent. He continuously gathered divine power in his hands, and 2 blue blasts flew out from his hands. Ha! The 2 divine power attacks, reaching their peak, hit the Nian beast's divine body solidly, directly shattering the opponent's divine body. This Nian beast, with a divine power of over 20 million, had no chance to fight back under his attack. He himself felt it somewhat unreal. Be careful! At this moment, Hu Qing in the distance seemed to have noticed something and hurriedly shouted to him. Jian Wushuang had not yet reacted and felt his divine body being restrained by a pair of arms. He wanted to turn around and check, but he couldn't move his body at all. His heart skipped a beat. It's the Nian beast. It was the Nian beast that took advantage of his relaxation to rush behind him and hold him tightly. He still didn't understand what it was trying to do. Hu Qing anxiously rushed over, loudly reminding, "It's going to take you with it to self-destruct. Self-destruct. The divine power of over 20 million. which he easily shattered, seemed unimpressive. But if this over 20 million divine power were to self-destruct, that would be no joke. In the Niantian secret realm, without the restraint of life divine power, it could explode beyond 20 million divine power. But this kind of thing was like pulling seedlings to encourage growth. The divine power had increased, but the secret techniques and treasures had not kept up to withstand the self-destruction of over 20 million divine power. Relying solely on the divine body was not enough. It required absolutely powerful treasures. His mind raced, thinking back and forth, and it seemed he had no life-saving treasures on him. Only the tribulation armor could be used. However, the current base divine power of the tribulation armor amplified to 2 million, and its defensive capability had a limit of 20 million at most. The Nian beast behind him possessed divine power surpassing 20 million. Damn it! Jian Wushuang turned his head with difficulty, and before he could think of a countermeasure, a dazzling light exploded from behind, reflecting on his face. Boom! A huge explosion sound directly sent those who had rushed over flying into the distance. The entire Niantian secret realm trembled threefold. The area where they were located began to collapse, but it did not implode. Wuxia, noticing this, was also taken aback. The structure of the Niantian secret realm intrigued them more and more. Could fully unleash divine power, clearly indicating a life level higher than the northern spacetime. However, the Niantian secret realm was located in the midstream of the northern spacetime. Realm King. Would he know? But now was not the time to think about that. The self-destruction just now was too powerful. Wuxia tentatively called out, "Brother Wushuang?" Seeing no response, his heart sank, truly fearing that Jian Wushuang had fallen. Buzz! With a move of divine power, the surrounding dust instantly converged into a point. The dust disappeared, and the ground was long gone. But in a collapsed void, Jian Wushuang's body was curled up in a ball, motionless. At this moment, the pyramid also flew over, seeing Jian Wushuang below. Wuxia flew out directly. "Brother Wushuang? He can't be dead, can he?" Wuxian's expression was also somewhat grim. Although he had fallen into the demonic path, his relationship with Jian Wushuang was still quite special. He was genuinely worried about Jian Wushuang's safety. Plop! Jian Wushuang's curled-up body trembled slightly. Then he turned over, lying on his back. "Ha!" He gasped heavily, his voice hoarse. "I'm not dead yet." Seeing him still able to move, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The three hurriedly flew over. Wuxia held the power of life, beginning to help Jian Wushuang recover his origin source. Wuxia took out some treasures for repairing the divine body and handed them to Jian Wushuang. Wuxian, looking around, found nothing worth taking out from himself, so he took out a jug of wine. Ugh! Jian Wushuang's face was pale. He covered his mouth and coughed dryly a few times, then took the wine jug and took a swig. It had just been too dangerous. Just a little more and he wouldn't have been able to hold on. Fortunately, the tribulation armor had finally erupted. It helped him withstand the attack. Otherwise, there would have been a corpse left here. "That Nian beast?" Jian Wushuang gasped and continued. "It was definitely being controlled by someone. I could feel the intense desire to survive in it, but it still chose to self-destruct in the end. I fear someone is scheming against us in the core of the Niantian secret realm and doesn't want us to go deeper." Wuxia also nodded and shared her reasoning. "What?" Wuxia exclaimed. "How is that possible? The divine power of these Nian beasts depends on the terrain. Does that mean there could be a group of Nian beasts with more than 20 million divine power in the core?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang, fully restored in divine power, stood up, took a sip from his wine flask, and said to everyone, "We've arrived. In the core, we might face a group of Nian beasts with more than 20 million divine power." Wuxian, though sinister and ruthless by nature, was also somewhat afraid. He said excitedly, "Are we still going to proceed? What for?" He couldn't understand anymore. If they were seeking to understand why the life level here was so high, the price was too great. It might be better to leave now. They hadn't encountered a group of Nian beasts yet. Just one yen beast with more than 20 million divine power had nearly cost Jian Wushuang his life. They really had no need to take such risks. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and shook his head, saying, "I'm afraid it's difficult to leave now." He looked into the darkness ahead, where there was an entire forest. A dark forest. The area they had just been in was right next to this dark forest. He guessed that place was likely the core of the Nianshan secret realm, and also the place controlling the Nianshan secret realm. Who could it be? He trembled slightly inside. He couldn't think of anyone capable of creating such a secret realm. Moreover, someone who could control it. The person behind this was probably not a strong figure from the northern spacetime. Most likely, they came from another spacetime, just like the 10,000 Willows divine tree. Back then, the 10,000 Willows divine tree was brought by Weiss. And inside the 10,000 Willows divine tree, there was a mechanical tribe's intelligent brain. A metal life form. This came from the southern spacetime. Also, Shilu was from the southern spacetime. Could this place also be from the southern spacetime? The southern spacetime had always been targeting them. He couldn't help but think this way. If it were true, this time the trouble would indeed be great. No less than the threat in the 10,000 Willows divine tree. But last time they had Danbao to rely on. This time no one would come to their rescue. Relying solely on mortal bodies, so-called tens of millions of divine power, was useless. The other party could create a reverse heaven-like region like the Nianshan secret realm. They didn't need to guess to know that the other party definitely had means to threaten their lives. Wu Tian's words were not something he hadn't considered. Only when they truly understood did they realize they had no choice left. Everyone also looked towards the dark forest. It seemed to coil around an ancient beast god, giving them an invisible sense of oppression. Everyone, you need to think clearly. This might be the only chance in your lifetime. Jian Wushuang turned to look at the three, explaining the importance of this matter. If they controlled the Nianshan secret realm, they could walk unchallenged in the future. As for Mieshang, returning to the downstream would allow them to annihilate him. Of course, the premise was not to let Mieshang go unrestrained. They were looking for a way to have their divine power unrestrained, which would perfectly suppress Mieshang. Wu Tian gritted his teeth. "I cannot participate in this battle. It's up to your decision. Brother Wu Zua, you take the pyramid and leave the Nianshan secret realm. Hu Qing and I will go on." He also knew that the others couldn't help this time. If they all went, they might be wiped out by the enemy. Wu Zua hesitated. "Shouldn't we leave the pyramid with you?" "No need," Hu Qing said at this moment. "The power required inside the pyramid is not enough to sustain this kind of battle." Jian Wushuang nodded firmly. "Say no more. You leave first, and leave the rest to us." At this moment, Wu Tian seemed to think of something and asked in surprise, "Is Mieshang really that powerful?" If it weren't for the threat of Mieshang, he couldn't understand why Jian Wushuang was so desperate. Perhaps, Jian Wushuang didn't fully reveal the truth, knowing that only Wu Zua and he truly understood the power of Mieshang. Wu Zua had learned about it from Realm King. He had witnessed it in the Wanlu divine tree. In fact, he was the one with the most authority to speak on the matter. Back then, when Mieshang incarnated in the Great Monk, the divine power he erupted with was beyond everyone's imagination. A god among the starry sky, he didn't even regard the Realm King as important. In the end, it was Weiss who stepped in to resolve it. Although Mieshang in the downstream spacetime was constrained by divine power, they still couldn't relax their vigilance. The opponent's Temple of Annihilation was an artifact. If there was an opportunity to improve himself, Jian Wushuang wished he could reach the ninth tribulation immediately to deal with Mieshang. Therefore, when he discovered something unusual in the Nianshan secret realm this time, he wanted to explore it. Every bit of strength he gained increased his hope of defeating Mieshang. So he couldn't give up. This was indeed the only opportunity. They were about to return to the downstream spacetime, and the time left for them was running out. "Take care, and don't push yourself too hard," Wu Zua sighed and said solemnly. After saying that, he left decisively with Wu Tian. The two of them took the pyramid, along with the others who were still unaware. intending to leave the core area. Watching the pyramid disappear from sight, Jian Wushuang said, "Now it's our turn to act." If the pyramid wanted to leave the Nianshan secret realm, they had to attract the one in the core. Otherwise, the pyramid would definitely be intercepted and killed. This was why he wanted Wuxia to take the pyramid away. With the pyramid, at least they had a means of protection. Their divine power hadn't surpassed 20 million. In fact, Jian Wushuang's own divine power hadn't reached 20 million. It was just that during his tribulation, he had refined golden divine power. One force breaking 100 others, resulting in his current combat power. The two of them stepped into the void, rushing towards the direction of the dark forest. The dark forest. Inside that mysterious cave. Splitting up, the face behind the throne showed a hint of surprise and said calmly, "Are they afraid?" Below the throne there were 3 figures. These 3 could be said to be the kings among the Nian beasts. Don't underestimate the Nian beasts by their life levels or divine power. They had extremely complete bloodline inheritances. The 3 Nian beasts standing below the throne were the ones with the purest bloodlines in the entire Nianshan secret realm. Calling them beast gods wouldn't be an exaggeration. Moreover, they were ancient-level beast gods. However, these 3 beast gods, whose bloodlines were incomparably pure, appeared to be overly cautious in the presence of the being on the throne. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. "Lord, what should we do now?" The 3 beast gods cautiously sought guidance. Their eyes filled with fear. This fear did not come from Jian Wushuang and the others but from the Lord on the throne. It was known that both Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing possessed divine power that could surpass 20 million. If not for being in the dark forest, they could have easily defeated these beast gods. But even so, they were not afraid. They were not even afraid of death. Just like the previous one who chose to self-destruct. They were not afraid of death, yet they feared the Lord on the throne. This situation was extremely peculiar. If outsiders saw this, they would certainly say the 3 beast gods were foolish. They were not enslaved, so why didn't they dare to fight? However, outsiders did not know that even though they were not enslaved, their tribe was firmly controlled by this cave lord. The entire Nianshan secret realm was created by this lord. The Nian tribe could thrive until now also because of the cave lord. If the lord on the throne felt they were no longer useful, he could rename the Nianshan secret realm at any time. This was the source of their fear. They were willing to sacrifice their lives to maintain their value. How pathetic. What to do? The face on the throne froze slightly, then under the dark red halo, revealed a horrifying face. A face that was utterly decayed. But judging from the facial features, it was clear that he was of the human race. He looked up, overlooking the 3 beast gods of the Nian tribe below, and said coldly, "If I have to teach you how to handle this kind of situation, then there is no need for you to stay. No, we just didn't expect these 2 damned human experts to discover the dark forest. And even Yen 7's death couldn't stop them." The 3 beast gods hurriedly explained in fear. It was mainly because this was the first time they encountered such a situation, where someone could come to the dark forest. Humph! The decayed figure on the throne slowly stood up. His body also decayed. Standing in front of the throne, he said in a cold voice, "Since Sang-Go couldn't deal with them, then you go. If you can't do it, let your descendants go, until the tribe is exterminated." Hearing the word extermination, although the 3 beast gods were terrified, they still harbored resentment in their hearts. If they could kill the opponent, they were willing to die 10 times. But they understood that everything was given by the other party, and taking it back was just a matter of lifting a finger. So they had no choice. "Go!" The decayed lord slightly raised his hand. Visible fragments fell off his arm, without the skin covering. It was clear that his bones had a halo, which was metal. The 3 kings of the Nianshan tribe left in despair. On the throne, the decayed face made a decision. "It seems the plan needs to be advanced." The decayed figure played with the mysterious token in his hand, injecting a wisp of thought power, and said gloomily, "Juyong, you should take your people and get out. The entire middle spacetime will become my ruined army in 3 days. Thought power was injected into the token. This message instantly reached giant peak spacetime, the second ranked in the middle-level spacetimes, following the Niantian secret realm. The giant sun immortal lord, or Zhuyang, was the overlord of giant peak spacetime, a peak universe master of the eighth tribulation, only slightly weaker than the abyssal lord. Moreover, he was from the legendary giant god clan. At this moment, in a certain palace in giant peak spacetime, upon receiving this message, immortal Lord Zhuyang was first stunned, then couldn't help but sigh. It seems the treasure of abyssal spacetime does not belong to me. Immortal Lord Zhuyang shook his head, losing the desire to compete. If it were the abyssal lord, he had the time and confidence to contend with him. But the existence from the Niantian secret realm had notified him, and it was merely a one-sided notification. There was no room for negotiation. Born in the starry sky, drifting to the northern spacetime. In fact, this was his homeland. But now it was about to be destroyed. We should leave. Zhuyang Immortal Lord turned to look at a few figures below the grand hall, his voice somewhat desolate. Although the giant peak spacetime was vast and powerful, comparable to the abyss spacetime, and could be considered a dominant figure in the entire mid-level spacetime, the treasures he cared about were his fellow clansmen of the giant god clan, who shared his status. It was also a stroke of luck that he encountered several fellow clansmen in the mid-level of the northern spacetime, and they were all from the direct lineage of the giant god clan. Although the giant peak spacetime was vast and powerful, comparable to the abyssal spacetime, and could be considered a dominant figure in the entire mid-level spacetime, the treasures he cared about were his fellow clansmen of the giant god clan, who shared his status. It was also a stroke of luck that he encountered several fellow clansmen in the mid-level of the northern spacetime, and they were all from the direct lineage of the giant god clan. Zhuyang, are you willing to accept this? A figure standing below stepped forward. He showed no respect towards the second strongest in the middle-level spacetime, instead showing some contempt. In the entire giant peak spacetime, no one dared to speak to Immortal Lord Zhuyang like this. But when Immortal Lord Zhuyang heard this, he only sighed lightly and did not blame him. Because the person speaking, like him, was also a powerful member of the giant god clan. Moreover, he was from the direct lineage of the giant god clan. In other words, they were family sharing the same bloodline. Humph! Although this did not make Immortal Lord Zhuyang angry, another powerful member of the giant god clan could not hold back any longer and said coldly, Frelesa, don't forget who took you in at the beginning. Now you're complaining, without even considering your own weight. Frelesa. If Jian Wushuang heard this name, he would definitely be shocked. This was the very divine spirit of the giant god clan who once threatened Qishan Temple. In front of mortals, he was considered a deity. Now, he was merely a universe master of the seventh tribulation. Over millions of eras, this deity had risen from the first tribulation to the universe master of the seventh tribulation in one breath. Standing next to him was another universe master of the eighth tribulation, Fuego. And there was also Phimisa, who was born after leaving Qishan Temple, who had also become a universe master of the seventh tribulation. These two clearly sided with Frelesa, so they dared to blame Immortal Lord Zhuyang. After leaving Qishan Temple, Frelesa had not given up his habit of causing trouble. Hearing someone expose his past, his face darkened, and he shouted, Chime, don't forget your status. The past events were indeed embarrassing. After being sent out by Zhenling, the three of them relied on Fuego to enter the middle-level spacetime, where they happened to meet Immortal Lord Zhuyang. At that time, Immortal Lord Zhuyang was already a peak strongman of the eighth tribulation. He was very happy to find his three clansmen and treated them without any airs. Now, Frelesa and Phimisa were both peak strongmen of the seventh tribulation, and Fuego was of the eighth tribulation realm. Their wings had long been hardened. Although they wouldn't repay kindness with ingratitude, they wouldn't voluntarily back down when it came to opportunities. That Chime, like Qi Zhouxiao, came from a collateral branch of the giant god clan and had no right to speak. A shout of anger left him speechless. Then, looking at Immortal Lord Zhuyang again, Flosa spoke once more. Zhuyang, don't forget, we are the giant god clan. What does that guy from Niantian's secret realm count for? The more Flosa spoke, the angrier he became. Being a member of the giant god clan was his greatest pride. Although they were beaten like dogs in Qishan Temple in the past, now with their strength they had gained confidence. The key was that the strong man from Nianxin's secret realm used to be a guardian of the giant god clan. To call him a guardian was to put it nicely. He was essentially a guard dog. Now he was arrogantly riding over their heads. Flosa naturally couldn't stand it. In response, Immortal Lord Zhuyang also had his own unspeakable difficulties. If the person in the Nianxin secret realm had no backing, he wouldn't have been so ready to slip away. Instead, he would have summoned a powerful clan member to descend. But that person had a background not inferior to their giant god clan. Nothing could be done. With almost equivalent backgrounds. It then depended on individual ability. His current strength was clearly not a match. The guardian deity of the giant god clan, at the very least, was a 9 tribulation realm expert. Sigh! Immortal Lord Zhuyang sighed and said, "No matter what, he is a demigod, and the person behind him is likely someone even our clan's ancestor wouldn't easily provoke. Making an enemy over such a small matter is really not worth it. Does this mean the glory of our giant god clan is worth less than half a coin?" Frelesa was relentless, clearly not ready to leave. Immortal Lord Zhuyang took a deep breath, squinting his eyes at Frelesa, feeling something was off. In the past, although Frelesa was also arrogant, his arrogance was backed by his abilities. Not to mention his strength, his intellect alone made him one of the top figures in the entire middle-level spacetime. Frosa had been managing the entire giant peak spacetime all along. Although Zhuyang was called Immortal Lord, he was essentially just a top enforcer. Normally, even he would heed Frelesa's advice because Frelesa's suggestions made sense. But this time, it was so unusual that there was definitely something he didn't know. "If there's something, just say it," Immortal Lord Zhuyang said as he sealed the spacetime and looked at Frelesa. Frelesa then gave a sinister smile, revealing his confidence. The change this time actually stemmed from the Nianxin secret realm. They had known for a long time that a mysterious expert from the upper-level spacetime had descended. When the pyramid entered the Nianxin secret realm, they also knew immediately, and nearly all the experts in middle-level spacetime saw it with their own eyes. Not long after, something happened in the Nianxin secret realm. They were being chased out. Even a fool would know that it was definitely those upper spacetime experts who had caused trouble in the Nianxin secret realm. Of course, the experts from the upper-level spacetimes had nothing to do with them. But they had something to do with Frelesa. Jian Wushuang. He had once personally visited the Nianxin secret realm to check the restrictions damaged by the pyramid. In the Nianxin secret realm, he sensed the aura left by Jian Wushuang and recognized him. This made it related to him. And just recently, he had also contacted Jian Wushuang. He learned about Jian Wushuang's findings in the Nianxin secret realm. "Didn't expect we'd meet this way." Frelesa and Jian Wushuang met through a token using thought power. They exchanged their information. The core of the Nianxin secret realm. The dark forest. Jian Wushuang and Hui Qing had already reached the edge. "As I guessed, there really is an existence from an alien spacetime hidden here, and they come from the starry sky." Starry sky. Hu Qing's expression darkened. Even though he was confident, hearing about a starry sky expert still made him involuntarily shocked. It should be known that the 4 great spacetimes were merely subsidiaries of the starry sky. The real core was still the starry sky. There not only were the supreme rules complete, but there was also a complete cultivation system and an observable cultivation goal. Jian Wushuang, however, remained calm about this. He was someone who wielded the power of the starry sky and had his own starry sky. Naturally, he didn't think much of the starry sky. Moreover, it was just an expert from the starry sky. Miashang also came from the starry sky. His master, Xianxia, was likely from the starry sky as well. And the divine spirit Frelesa back then also came from the starry sky. The other side even claimed to be the #1 clan in the starry sky. When they met again, it was just like that. Their realms were the same, but divine power was vastly different. He was much stronger than the so-called strongest clan, the giant god clan experts. From what he learned from Frelesa, he also figured out the strength of the person behind the scenes. Just a scattered tribulation, Nothing to worry about. Scattered tribulation? Hu Qing furrowed his brow and asked in surprise, Brother Wushuang, how did you know? He had practiced the heavenly Tao but could not deduce the crisis ahead. Yet Jian Wushuang knew. Wasn't that surprising? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and said, I met an old acquaintance and he told me the matter of Frelesa could be discussed later. For now, they still had to enter the dark forest and find out who was behind this. The secret of the Niantian secret realm was something he had to uncover. Moreover, the other party had no intention of letting them go, so they might as well eliminate them entirely. The ninth tribulation realm wasn't frightening, especially when it was a scattered tribulation. With him and Hu Qing working together, they were more than capable of handling it. Could be seen as a chance to practice in advance. After all, there were no restrictions in this place, and both of them could unleash divine power exceeding 20 million. How much divine power could that ninth tribulation realm scattered tribulation have? He really couldn't speculate without more information from Frelesa. After entering the dark forest, he felt that this place resembled the scorched earth left behind by Moro spacetime. The drained power here created a suffocating sensation. Something's wrong. Hu Qing's body halted abruptly, coming to a complete stop. Since they had entered the other party's stronghold, something being off was normal. But for Hu Qing to stop, he must have sensed danger. Jian Wushuang's gaze swept around, his single hand slightly moving back, ready to draw his sword at any moment. He maintained his super-ancient transformation, with divine power of 18 million. If he used the Origin Source Dojo, he could surpass 20 million at any time. The person behind this was a ninth tribulation realm expert, so it was better to be cautious. Speaking of which, this was his first encounter with a ninth tribulation realm expert, and he was curious. Have you discovered something? He kept his eyes vigilant, observing his surroundings. Hu Qing formed a hand seal, and an eye appeared above his forehead, seemingly probing the surroundings. Buzz! A highly concealed disturbance, which even Jian Wushuang hadn't noticed, was directly locked onto by Hu Qing, who loudly reminded, Southwest, someone is setting up a formation. Clang! Jian Wushuang drew his sword immediately. The ice-blue blade slid out of the scabbard and instantly cut through countless shrubs. Space-time. The fourth sword move. A sword move powerful enough to kill all in the eighth tribulation realm. It steadily suppressed the space-time of the Niantian secret realm. It slashed in the direction Hu Qing had indicated. Setting up a formation? If they fought openly, they naturally wouldn't be afraid, but they feared being trapped by a formation. By then, they would have to fight whether they could win or not. The control would be entirely in the opponent's hands. It had to be broken. The space-time sword shattered the space of the dark forest, freezing time. The king of the Nian beasts, who was setting up the formation, didn't even realize he had been exposed. He couldn't feel time at all. He only felt himself slowing down. Then he entered a shattered space-time. Aired. He barely managed to say before his divine body began to shatter. Along with the unfinished formation around him, everything shattered. Like a mirror. Shattered space, shattered scene. Third brother, on the other side of the dark forest, sensing the disappearance of his companion's divine power. The leader of the Nian beasts, unable to contain his grief, erupted in fury. The three formations were interconnected, with one broken, the rest were rendered useless. Now they could only brace themselves and charge forward. Huff! Jian Wushuang's breath was a bit unstable. Although he had reached the level of minor achievement in the spacetime sword, it was still a bit taxing. The full-force strike just now had reduced his breath by 30%. But it didn't affect his divine power. Are you okay? Hu Qing looked at him, worried. The power of that sword just now was extraordinary, even leaving Hu Qing in awe. He shook his head and calmed himself, saying, No problem, 2 auras are approaching, both with strong divine power, but they shouldn't be the ones behind this. Yes. Hu Qing's gaze also fixed ahead. In an instant, 2 towering figures descended. The other 2 kings of the Nian beasts arrived. They possessed 25 million divine power in the dark forest. If they had completed the formation, they would have been even stronger. But that sword shattered their hopes. You killed my third brother. You must die today. The towering king of the Nian beasts, with blood-red eyes, symbolized rage. He had no choice. Today it was either them or Jian Wushuang and his companions who would die. Trash! Jian Wushuang spat disdainfully. He had already figured out the Nian beast's strength. Without the Niantian secret realm, they were nothing. The space-time sword just now broke the space-time of the dark forest, instantly lowering their divine power to a freezing point, allowing him to easily kill them. But that sword also cost him an important trump card. In the depths of the dark forest, within a cave mansion. Shattered space-time, he actually comprehended space-time. The decayed face showed a shocked expression, exclaiming, "He's only in the 7th tribulation realm. Yet he's so strong and even mastered the power of the starry sky." He, coming from the starry sky, had great confidence after being transformed by that great figure of the southern spacetime. But seeing Jian Wushuang's methods, he was still stunned. The power of the starry sky, a very special power even in the starry sky, could only be mastered by a few. But it wasn't too extraordinary. As a great expert of the 9th tribulation realm, he had seen such geniuses before. Mainly, Jian Wushuang's spacetime realm truly amazed him. A 7th tribulation universe master from an attached spacetime so strong, the starry sky geniuses taught by the star spirits are no better, can't even compare to a universe master from an attached spacetime. How ridiculous! The decayed face showed disdain for those geniuses in the starry sky and also jealousy. Star spirits, great figures in the starry sky, silently watching their struggle. Universe master? Even a 9th tribulation realm universe master was nothing. Powerful 9th tribulation realm universe masters could reach the demigod level, comparable to so-called starry sky true gods. But what did it matter? In front of the star spirits, they were all fleeting clouds. Only star spirits were eternal. 9th tribulation realm, though undying, many had fallen through countless eras. They couldn't be considered immortal. Only the 12 star spirits eternally ruled the starry sky. Unshakable. The so-called eternal beings of the northern spacetime were a joke in front of the star spirits. Being a disciple of the star spirits was every cultivator's dream. To become a disciple of the star spirits, at the very least, one had to be a demigod. Even able to surpass the universe master, to comprehend the supreme law rules. As a 9th tribulation realm expert, this was also his dream. But with his divine body shattered, he lost everything. Expelled from the giant god clan, he wandered to the southern spacetime, enduring countless humiliations. Finally, with the guidance of that great figure, he came to the northern spacetime. By mastering the Niantian secret realm, he regained his former confidence. Now that the overall situation was taking shape, he needed to reclaim everything he once had. Originally, it wouldn't have been so soon, but unfortunately, Jian Wushuang and the others discovered his plan, forcing him to act ahead of schedule. The power of decay spread through his divine body. It eventually covered the entire cave mansion. Above the dark forest, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, each facing one opponent. The two kings of the Niantian clan, sparing no divine power, attacked frantically. They had already reached a state of madness. Unfortunately, although their divine power was strong, it could only bully ordinary beings in the 8th tribulation realm. To Jian Wushuang it posed no threat at all, because TMS divine power did not originally belong to TNEM. As for Hu Qing, he was even more at ease. The divine power displayed by the Niantian clan, to be precise, was still too illusory. They had no means of amplification, only relying on the terrain of the Niantian secret realm to increase their divine power. But the level of their life force had not changed at all. This was the essential difference. Their life force level remained unchanged. It was like a child with the strength of an adult. You might be strong, but your defense falls short. And also, there's the reaction speed. Jian Wushuang's divine power was clearly maintained at around 20 million, yet he could effortlessly outfight his opponent. Holding the Wanjia sword, he effortlessly dodged the attacks of the Nian Beast King. Whoosh! In the moment of passing by, he casually slapped the opponent's back. With a move of his divine power, his overwhelming strength, far surpassing the Nian beast, directly tore the opponent's back apart, exposing the transparent divine body. Death Sword. A sword shadow split out from his origin source. Even without using the Wuxia sword, it could unleash such a powerful death sword. This was the death sword after reaching perfection. Buzz. Billions of sword shadows poured out. What Jian Wushuang saw was the black sword shadows condensed from the sky full of black mist. But when the Nian beast turned around, it saw countless death gods, wielding scythes as if to harvest its life. The death sword was most suitable for dealing with those with lower life force levels. Everything restrained each other. Jian Wushuang could restrain everything. To deal with life, he had death. To deal with death, he had life. He would never be at a disadvantage. Die! A furious shout sealed the opponent's fate. The Nian Beast King stumbled and turned around, waving his hands helplessly to block. But it couldn't touch anything. This was the gap in realms. An unbridgeable gap. Moreover, death just happened to restrain his weak life force. At this moment, it could only wait for death. Countless black sword shadows pierced through the Nian Beast King's divine body. Puff! 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 The eyes of the Nian Beast King were filled with unwillingness. At the moment of death, it seemed not to regret. Big Brother, the other Nian Beast King, fighting Hu Qing from a distance, had also reached a dead end. Seeing its big brother fall, it could no longer endure. After a mournful cry, a dazzling light burst from its divine body. Be careful! Jian Wushuang instantly retreated, simultaneously reminding, this lunatic is going to self-destruct. Having suffered once, how could he suffer a second time? He immediately fled backwards. Although the enemy's life force level was low, the power of his divine energy was real. Though somewhat illusory, when he exploded, the divine energy quantum he split into was not illusory at all. Last time, he almost died from this, so he always guarded against it. He would never fall for it a second time. But Hu Qing remained unmoved. Facing the self-destruction of the Nian Beast King head-on, he did not flinch. Zen. Infinite. Universe. Earth bind. Hu Qing chanted, palms together. With Taoist spells, he walked the path of Buddhism. Knowing and doing were united. The four directions became one. The explosion did not spread. It stopped in front of Hu Qing and disappeared. Virtuous. Putting his hands together and murmuring a chant, Hu Qing turned his head and said, Brother Wushuang, let's keep moving forward. All right? Jian Wushuang felt a bit speechless, silently thinking to himself, is it necessary? A single movement could get us away, but he insists on crushing the last shred of hope for the opponent. A monk, practicing Buddhism yet capable of creating more demonic thoughts. No wonder the Tongtian Buddha transformed into the infernal demon. There are traces to follow. Always thinking of doing good deeds. If peace reigned throughout the world, they would be useless. So, wouldn't a few demon children need to appear to show off their might? Wu Tian could be said to have been born for this purpose. After Hu Qing's Buddhist Tao transformed, he improved quite a bit. But his methods became more sharp and decisive, less dragging. Thinking about it, it's quite good. Swoosh! Wait for me! In a flash, he caught up. They continued heading deeper into the dark forest. Passing through the massive bushes, they didn't see a single living thing. There were no longer any Nian beasts to obstruct them. What they didn't know was that all the Nian beasts had disappeared at this point. The power of decay had already covered the entire Nianshan secret realm. Jian Wushuang had never encountered such power, so he didn't find anything suspicious. The power of the starry sky was extremely rare, but the power of decay was even more special. It belonged to a branch of destructive divine power. It wasn't considered the power of destruction. Because the power of destruction transcended the supreme law rules, it was divine power. It was the power used by gods. The power of decay, when cultivated to its peak, could also rival divine power. However, the power of the starry sky inherently came from the starry sky. Even if cultivated to its peak, it would only be demigod level. But the starry sky power that Jian Wushuang used came from his own origin source starry sky, so he didn't have this limitation. Even if he did, he wouldn't know it. They kept flying through the dark forest. The less danger they encountered, the more cautious they became. Even Hu Qing couldn't detect any dangerous aura. Either the opponent was hiding very well, or the opponent was truly powerful and didn't need to hide, making them undetectable. While they were flying mid-air, they noticed something was wrong on the ground. Jian Wushuang was the first to stop, exclaiming, "Something's off. Why has the ground changed color? Red, turning into black?" Hu Qing also showed a surprised expression. When they entered the dark forest, the ground was red and the vegetation was black. Now the ground and vegetation had merged, both turning black. Swoosh! The two of them landed on the ground. Jian Wushuang gently scooped up a handful of black soil, sniffing it in his hand. A decaying aura instantly made his aura wilt by 3 points. Then he used his thought power to probe and it also wilted. There's something strange. The person behind this must be making a move. Dropping the soil, he looked up into the distance. From this soil he smelled a threat. This threat was right ahead. The avatar within his origin source was contacting Frelesa. He had missed asking some things earlier because of the Nian Beast King. He only knew that the opponent was a scattered tribulation at the 9th tribulation realm. But he hadn't asked about the opponent's methods. To control the Niantian secret realm and drive the Nian beasts to attack them so madly. His means were far superior to those of his past opponents. He was absolutely an existence on par with Mieshang. If the person behind all this knew what Jian Wushuang was thinking, he might have let out a smile, because he thought too highly of himself. The 9th tribulation realm was indeed powerful, but compared to the death god in the starry sky, it was still far inferior. That was a true god. Universe masters who could achieve the status of demigods were very few, let alone those comparable to true gods. The gods in the starry sky and the gods born in spacetime were worlds apart. The gap between them could not be bridged. This was also why no true god from the subsidiary rivers of spacetime would stay in spacetime to cultivate. They all went to the realm god continent. The difference was too great. Only the realm god continent could be comparable to the starry sky. It was also where the strong from the 4 subsidiary spacetimes and even the starry sky gathered. Because even gods needed to improve themselves. Look at Mieshang. Whether it was Mieshang seeking to advance further or Danbao perfecting his life secret methods, it all required cultivation and scheming. They could not just sit idly by. Even gods needed to cultivate and seek opportunities. Cultivators even more so. They wanted to become stronger. The universe masters of the 9th tribulation realm were not enough. They needed to achieve the status of demigods or even rival the gods. They had to break through the boundaries of the universe. If they had no chance of attaining godhood, they had to become the gods of their own universe. Universe gods. Jian Wushuang learned of this term from Frelesa. Universe god. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. Perhaps this was the highest position. If there was no godhood, then he would create one with his own hands. But his universe contained a starry sky. And now he had to take a new path. What should he call himself then? Starry sky god? He shook his head, feeling he was thinking too far ahead. For now, he needed to focus on his opponent. The former 9th tribulation universe master, known as a demigod. Let's go. A confident expression appeared on his face. Knowing some information about the opponent, he no longer felt tense. Instead, he casually said to Hu Qing, "I found him." Hu Qing's face lit up with joy. Even his own calculations hadn't revealed anything. Yet Jian Wushuang managed to locate the opponent. "It seems your thought strength has increased significantly with your cultivation, Brother Wushuang. Don't be modest. Compared to your Zen insight, I'm far behind. I just happened to learn something from an old acquaintance." He smiled bitterly and shook his head. It was actually due to that power. And the words Frelesa had said caught his attention. Hu Qing's Zen insight couldn't predict it because the opponent had never existed in the northern spacetime. It was beyond Hu Qing's understanding. The prediction could only sense an unknown threat, which kept them on alert. Now that they were prepared, they were less worried. They didn't need to fly anymore. They directly tore through the space and teleported to the source of the threat. A cave mansion exuding a dark red aura. This is it. He looked at the cave mansion and found nothing special. There were no formations around. It didn't look like a place where a strong person would retreat and rest. According to Frelesa, the opponent was merely a scattered tribulation who was barely surviving. Although he was in the 9th tribulation realm, he had lost his origin source, and even his divine body was shattered. Only in the starry sky, where life was abundant, his life level had been elevated to perfection. He wouldn't die, but he would deteriorate. Deterioration was not like death. It was something more terrifying than death. Because once deteriorated, resurrection was useless, unless he could rebuild his divine body. Even if he no longer needed the origin source and took the divine body route alone. But rebuilding the divine body was no different from reincarnation. Divine power was in the divine body. If the divine body had to be reforged, they might as well start over with the soul too. Sure, here is the translated script in past tense. Without divine power, and with the origin source shattered after failing the tribulation, only the soul remained. Starting from scratch, no matter how strong one's state of mind was, it was difficult to reach new heights. Moreover, it would be 10 times more exhausting than the first time. One would only avoid a few detours. The early stages would go smoothly, but the later stages would be a kind of torment. No one would use this method. Most would choose to reincarnate. But countless strong individuals disappeared after reincarnation. Because to recover their past life memories, they needed to surpass their previous life's achievements. Thus, countless reincarnated strong ones were lost. But this was the best approach. If unwilling to let the soul sink, one would fall into a closed loop, unable to surpass their peak. Tribulation. Far more cruel than they had imagined. Originally, they thought that reaching the 9th tribulation realm was the end. Unexpectedly, there was still this barrier blocking their way forward. The one in the cave had reached this dead end. Of course, this was what Jian Wushuang believed. He couldn't figure out what the other party's real purpose was. Surely they weren't here to sightsee in the northern spacetime. Stretching his wrist, Jian Wushuang shouted loudly, "Sir, are you inviting us into the cave to catch up? Or will you come out to meet us?" Either they went in or the other party came out to meet. Jian Wushuang could accept either choice. He truly wanted to see how the other party managed to create the Niantian secret realm, able to isolate the northern spacetime, achieving true isolation from the heavens. At this moment, they were like on the realm god continent, without restrictions. No movement. After shouting, the two waited for a long time, a full incense stick's time, without any movement, which made Jian Wushuang feel a bit awkward. They had no choice but to be invited in. Facing the dark red cave, Jian Wushuang felt no fear. He wanted to see what was hidden inside. Bang! Jian Wushuang took a step forward, but was stopped by Hu Qing before entering the cave. "Brother Wushuang, why don't I go ahead and explore, and you cover from behind?" "No, we can't split up. It's better to act together." Without any hesitation, he directly rejected Hu Qing's suggestion. Although confident, he was not arrogant. Splitting up left him without confidence. Hu Qing's strength was 3 points higher than his. Before reaching the 8th tribulation realm, he couldn't guarantee victory over Hu Qing. The other party, like him, was also extraordinary, unable to fight across realms against Hu Qing. Together, without the constraints of divine power, they could face a 9th tribulation realm opponent. But if separated, it would be risky. Seeing his determination, Hu Qing couldn't argue further. He prepared to enter together. But at this moment, a violent force burst out from the cave. Jian Wushuang struggled to resist, his divine power constantly shrinking. His whole being began to wither. "The King of Decay!" Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth and shouted, "I know who you are. No need to hide." This time, as soon as he finished speaking, there was a response. "Oh!" A lazy voice came from the cave, followed by a slightly surprised question. "Did Zhuyang tell you?" In the northern spacetime, only immortal Lord Jiang of the Giant God Clan knew his identity. If it weren't for the immense favor granted by the old ancestor of the Giant God Clan, he wouldn't have bothered with those few members of the Giant God Clan. Even if he was expelled before disrupting the entire mid-level spacetime, he chose to notify the other party. Unexpectedly, the other party turned around and betrayed him. That last bit of gratitude was gone, and from then on, he had no connection with the Giant God Clan. In the dark red cave dwelling, a withered leg emerged. The missing pants leg revealed ghastly white bones. Swoosh! The entire figure appeared before Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. A skinny figure with a nearly destroyed flesh body, and even the divine body showed numerous cracks. Jian Wushuang, having seen much of the world, was not surprised by this decay. It was as expected. Moreover, he clearly felt the other party's divine power. With the flesh almost gone, the divine body was exposed and somewhat broken. There was no way to conceal it. Only the unique decay power of the other party, which they had never seen before, prevented them from detecting it. Now that they had witnessed this power, they could naturally pinpoint the other party next time. But there would be no next time. Meeting face to face, they were bound to determine victory or death. A threat to the northern spacetime had to be eliminated. Moreover, the other party had indeed done this. The aura of decay had already spread throughout the entire mid-level spacetime. If allowed to succeed, the entire spacetime in mid-level would be completely cut off from the upper and lower levels. Without the flow of the mid-level spacetime, the downstream and endstream would also be doomed. By then, the entire northern spacetime would be left with only the upstream or upper level. Realm King would be infuriated. The figure with an incomplete face stood before Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, yet he exuded absolute confidence. To let you understand me better, listen carefully to every word I'm about to say. Jian Wushuang, intrigued, remained calm and gestured with his hand. No rush. Speak slowly. At their level, even if they were to decide life and death in the next moment, they had to remain calm. That was the aura of a strong person. My name is Barut, from the starry sky. I know. Jian Wushuang spread his hands and continued. Why don't you tell us about the Niantian secret realm? I'm very curious why divine power is not restricted here. Well, Barut looked somewhat embarrassed and awkwardly smiled. I'm afraid you'll only know after you kill me. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and said, Then there's no need for more useless talk. Do it. Take him down. He and Hu Qing each moved apart, forming a triangle to besiege Barut. A ninth tribulation expert from the starry sky, Jian Wushuang had long wanted to test his strength. This was the chance. Buzz. Super Eternal Ancient Transformation. The perfect Super Eternal Ancient Transformation instantly brought his divine power to its peak. Then came the descending arena. 3 rounds of sun and moon slowly rose, hanging high in the sky. Jian Wushuang stood on sky-supporting mountain, his right hand slightly trembling. This wasn't due to nervousness or fear, but because in his mind, he was constantly calculating the speed of drawing his sword. To achieve the step of calculating 10,000 steps. He had learned this from Hu Qing. In battle, one must achieve the utmost perfection. Fighting those Nian beasts held no meaning. It didn't allow him to feel the clash between strong individuals. On the other side, Hu Qing also took his stance. The third eye on his forehead had already manifested. The origin source arena transformed into a chessboard. 2 figures emerged from it. Future self. Equally heaven-defying secret techniques. Divine power continued to climb. Both their divine powers surpassed 25 million. In the dark forest, more perfect and complete than that fiery mountain. Their divine power was pushed to the extreme. However, Hu Qing still had some hidden abilities. If he fully unleashed his future self, there might be no limits. This was the terrifying part. How powerful he would be in the future, he would be now. The key was that Hu Qing's future self was only maintaining the state of himself after 10 million or even 100 million eras. If he could improve further and maintain the state of himself after 1 billion eras, he would likely be even more powerful. 25 million. 27 million. Barut tilted his head, glanced at Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, and his expression was somewhat disdainful. With a casual wave, a bright armor appeared on his body. If this is all you can do, then it will be you who will die. As soon as he finished speaking, the battle wind gradually rose. None of the three took the initiative to attack. They were observing the changes in the aura, preparing to strike at the moment most advantageous to them. Hu Qing's Zen insight played the greatest role at this moment. He would be the first to break the deadlock. Zen. Buzz. Hu Qing's future self, with eyes wide open in rage, suddenly glared at Barut. His body twisted, hands moving back and forth, and a staff appeared in his hands. Swinging the staff, he formed a shape resembling the sun and moon, and instantly attacked Barut. Jian Wushuang, however, did not rush. He prepared to act at the opportune moment. He had not yet seen Barut make a move. Hence, he couldn't draw his sword yet. This time, he intended to use his strongest sword move, to forcibly perform the space-time reincarnation sword move. He would use Barut, this 9th Tribulation Realm powerhouse, as his target. Boom! Before Hu Qing's swung staff could land on Barut, it was blocked by a single finger from the latter. Humph! Barut sneered disdainfully. Is that all? With a flick of his finger, he blocked. With a second flick, he attacked. In just the blink of an eye, Hu Qing's future self was repelled. That powerful force shot straight into the sky. Hu Qing was entirely shaken back, clutching his chest as he felt the trembling of his origin source. Just now, what happened? Hu Qing, after being repelled, still found it somewhat unbelievable. His attack had a divine power of 27 million, but when he approached the opponent, it suddenly decreased by 7 million. Yet, the opponent's strength hadn't changed at all. While Hu Qing was still puzzled, Jian Wushuang reminded him, "It's the power of decay. We're still being constrained." At this moment, Jian Wushuang understood the problem. He had felt it when the opponent appeared. At that time, his divine power suddenly dropped, then surged back to its peak. But Barut's strength had never changed. The threshold for the 9th Tribulation Realm was 20 million divine power. But Barut was a genuine 9th Tribulation powerhouse, with divine power definitely exceeding 30 million. Even after achieving the decaying body, his divine power would still be above 20 million. Even so, he and Hu Qing had this strength too. Logically, they should be on par with him. It was impossible for the gap to be so large. One finger blocked Hu Qing's attack, the second finger repelled him. There was only one possibility. They still hadn't broken through that boundary. Or rather, this boundary was controlled by Barut himself. The opponent's divine power, without their constraint, was indeed nothing special. After coming to the Niantian secret realm, Jian Wushuang felt his whole being elevate. The feeling of having no restraints made him overly confident. Now, suddenly being grabbed by the throat, he realized just how difficult it was to surpass 20 million units of divine power. Clang! However, no matter how powerful the opponent was, this place was still the northern spacetime. He had to draw his sword and fight. Spacetime! Buzz! The surrounding spacetime isolated the force of decay, and his divine power was restored once again. Although it would still be suppressed upon encountering the opponent, he couldn't even touch the opponent without enhancing his power beyond 20 million. Reincarnation! The twin sword moves merged. Spacetime reincarnation. With one strike, the vortex in the spacetime began to condense, forging the spacetime reincarnation. This is my proudest sword strike to date. Swoosh! Sword chi filled the sky, permeating the entire reincarnation. A reincarnation forged by the sword. Then let it be destroyed by the sword. The 5th sword move of the Starry Sky Chronicles. At this moment, it officially took form, symbolizing that he had reached a stage where he could fully execute a single complete strike since his initiation. If the sword could not break through the power enveloping the opponent, then this time they and Hu Qing had indeed hit a tough nut. 1,000 tribulations forging reincarnation. The sword of time suppressed spacetime. The entire dark forest trembled. Spacetime? Reincarnation? Barut showed a look of apprehension, his figure constantly retreating. The decayed figure wanted to evade, but found that the surrounding area was all space-time, making it impossible to escape. His decayed body also had life. The end of life was the cycle of death and reincarnation. How could that be avoided? Domain. Knowing he couldn't evade, Bharat prepared to withstand this sword strike. The space-time reincarnation sword contained the power of origin source. It was augmented by the origin source of 3 perfect universes, equivalent to divine power exceeding 25 million. At this moment, Bharat's divine power was about the same. He naturally didn't dare to confront it head-on, using the same means he had employed against Wuxia once more. Domain. It was also the core of this Xianxia secret realm. Buzz. Jian Wuxia frowned, clearly feeling his power continuously weakening. However, the weakening power was divine power, not his origin source. Thus, the space-time reincarnation sword did not retreat at all. Instead, the origin source surged. Ha ha! At this moment, he also realized it and mocked. Bharat, your tricks are useless against me. The gigantic sword shadow condensed by the space-time reincarnation tore through the entire dark forest, charging towards Bharat. The power of this sword strike was undeniably genuine. As Bharat resisted, his arms were directly shattered. His already decayed body suffered even more damage at this moment. If you think this can defeat me, then you're underestimating it. A trace of blood appeared in Bharat's eyes, his lips curling up crazily. He was known as the King of Decay, already beyond repair, so why fear damage to his divine body? Moreover, his reliance was not on the little divine power within himself. It was the Xianxia secret realm beneath his feet. Domain. It could also be called divine domain. In the domain, he was invincible. Break. Bharat's ethereal divine body merged into the domain, and the dark forest completely vanished. A grand dark abyss appeared in front of Jian Wuxia and Wuxia. At this moment, all the cultivators outside and all the super-strong practitioners of the mid-level spacetime could see a massive abyss appearing in the Xianxia secret realm. The abyss spun, slowly consuming the origin source and divine power of the entire mid-level spacetime. Jian Wuxia's most prideful strike fell into the abyss, like a stone sinking into the sea, without any reaction. Devour! The abyss continuously contracted, absorbing the essence of the entire mid-level spacetime. This was true devouring. The disappearance of the dark forest, leaving behind scorched earth, was evidence. Just like what happened in Moro spacetime. He couldn't help but swallow nervously, his voice trembling. It's over. He intends to devour the entire mid-level spacetime. Devour the entire mid-level spacetime? Wuxia was also stunned. Mid-level spacetime, though not as profound as the upper-level spacetime, was not something a single cultivator could contend with. If the opponent could truly devour and assimilate it, by then, the entire mid-level spacetime would be under Bharat's control, and the two of them wouldn't even have the ability to escape. Stop him! Jian Wuxia didn't hesitate. There was only one solution now. Stop the opponent or they would surely face death. But how to stop him? The abyss was Bharat's so-called domain. They couldn't even find Bharat's true body. They couldn't possibly destroy this abyss. For a moment, Jian Wuxia didn't know where to start. Gazing into the abyss also stared back at him. Domain! Wuxia frowned. Let me deduce it and see what makes this domain so remarkable. Seeing Wuxia's confident expression, Jian Wuxia also smiled, facing everything head-on. Fearless. Whoosh! Transforming into thousands, he rushed in all directions. I can devour too. In an instant, the entire Xianxia secret realm fell into the abyss. Fortunately, the pyramid was fast enough not to be trapped inside. The choice they made back then was correct, sending Wuxia and the others ahead. Otherwise, they would all be doomed here. Wuxia, don't come back. Leave the mid-level spacetime directly. Realizing something was wrong, he had already informed Wuxia to leave, and told him to inform Realm King of the situation here. In fact, there was no need to notify. Realm King already knew. The moment Bharat stepped out of his cave, Realm King noticed the anomaly in mid-level spacetime. This made Realm King very distressed. In his heart, he also complained why disasters followed Jian Wushuang and his group wherever they went. He really wanted to send them out of the northern spacetime immediately. Sending them to the Realm God continent, he didn't believe they could cause any trouble there. In fact, before reaching the Realm God continent, they had already sown the seeds of several formidable enemies. Going there would mean becoming enemies with everyone. Inside the pyramid leaving the Niantian's secret realm, Wuxia was uneasy after receiving the transmission, but Babata ignored him and headed directly downstream. Wushuang. This joke has gone too far this time. In his anxiety, Wuxia summoned everyone to discuss countermeasures. As for Realm King, he couldn't be relied upon. Now, he didn't even have the qualification to enter the mid-level spacetime. At this moment, the mid-level spacetime was like it was on the edge of an abyss. To salvage it, they could only break the abyss. Realm King's avatar was blocked outside by the law rules within the abyss's domain. He couldn't get in, and even if he could, there was nothing he could do. At most, he could only stand there in frustration. No! Realm King gritted his teeth, standing outside the spacetime, unwilling to accept this. His northern spacetime had suffered countless disasters, his true self had fallen in one of those disasters, and if he lost the mid-level spacetime too, it would mean losing the lower-level spacetime as well. The lower-level spacetime wasn't too important, but the end-level spacetime had a stabilizing effect on the northern spacetime. Losing the convergence point of the end-level spacetime would spell the end for the northern spacetime. Only my elder brother can help now, Realm King said helplessly as he traversed through spacetime, returning to the Realm God continent and heading directly to a small island in the sea. Last time, for the sake of the God of Life, he had visited several bigwigs in the starry sky, and in the end, Weiss intervened. As a result, the Wanlu divine tree was almost destroyed. Weiss was not going to help him again. Moreover, seeking help from the starry sky at this time was useless. He could only rely on his friends on the Realm God continent. For instance, the Great Realm King, who governed the 4 subsidiary spacetimes. Outside the starry sky, there were 4 subsidiary spacetimes. Each had a Realm King representing the East, South, West, and North. Above Realm Kings but below Realm King God, there was also a low-key God. He was the Great Realm King. This Great Realm King was extremely low-key, rarely showing up, and few knew his whereabouts. Only the 4 Realm Kings and Realm King God knew his residence. The Northern Realm King adjusted his attire and, with a move, landed on the island. Elder brother, standing on the beach, Realm King called out, but no one responded. After calling again, there was a slight sound from the island's only wooden house. The door of the wooden house was pushed open from the inside. A delicate child walked out, and upon seeing the Northern Realm King, his face lit up with joy. He said, "Master predicted correctly, Uncle has indeed come. Jing Su, where is your master?" Northern Realm King had no time for pleasantries and quickly inquired about the whereabouts of the Great Realm King. If he were here, he would have come out, which clearly meant he wasn't present. Seeing the anxious look on the Northern Realm King's face, Jing Su calmly said, "Master has gone to Nantian Mansion to visit a friend. He should have just arrived. Then I will—" Knowing the Great Realm King had gone to Nantian Mansion, the Northern Realm King prepared to leave immediately. As he was about to leave, Jing Su stopped him. "Uncle Bei, are you here because of Barut in the mid-level spacetime? How did you know?" Northern Realm King was taken aback. Even he had just learned about this matter. Could it be that Jian Wushuang's connections were so extensive that they had ties on the Realm God continent? He knew Jian Wushuang had ties with Weiss, but Weiss never came to the Realm God continent, nor would he ask the Great Realm King for help. Besides, Weiss was one of the 12 star spirits and had no time for such trivial matters. If he wanted to, he would have dealt with Barut long ago. Barut was just a demigod at his peak, not a real threat. He couldn't even compare to Mieshang. Jing Su, anticipating this, explained, "Master told me you would come and that it was because of the mid-level spacetime. Master went to Nantian Mansion to visit friends because of this matter." Oh! Realm King was delighted upon hearing this. He hadn't expected his elder brother to be aware of the trouble in the mid-level spacetime of the northern starry sky. It was indeed a case of getting what he wanted without much effort. So, the great realm king knows about Barut? In fact, he didn't know much about Barut, not even why he had such powerful treasures. He could devour the entire mid-level spacetime. That I don't know either. My master only instructed that when my martial uncle arrives, I am to follow him to the northern spacetime and kill Barut. Kill Barut. Jing Su, who still looked like a child, spoke such domineering words. However, his aura seemed ordinary, showing nothing special. Even in the ninth tribulation realm, divine power would be suppressed to 20 million in the northern spacetime. How could he kill Barut? Realm King did not doubt his words at all. Since the great Realm King had given the order, there must be confidence behind it. Moreover, this martial nephew of his was not simple. He was a demigod. Despite his childlike appearance, once he exploded into action, transforming into his divine demon form, he had few opponents in the ninth tribulation realm. He once had a formidable record of fighting 3 demigods alone. Good, good, good. Realm King said good 3 times in succession, then quickly took Jing Su, left the island, tore through space and headed straight for northern spacetime. At this time, the mid-level of the northern spacetime had completely collapsed. Only the abyssal spacetime was still struggling. Almost all the universe masters of the mid-level spacetime had gathered there. What happened in the Xianxia secret realm that destroyed more than 30 spacetime zones in a row, leaving only the abyssal spacetime stable? Hard to say. It's probably related to those super-strong beings from the upper-level spacetime. In any case, this time we leave it to fate. Those who were unaware had resigned themselves to fate. Only a few of the giant god clan knew the truth. However, their expressions were not good. They could have escaped, but they heeded Feroce's words and decided to stay and gamble once. It seemed they had bet wrong. Feroce, this is all your fault. If it weren't for you, we would have already gone to the giant god mountain in the starry sky. Aren't there plenty of treasures in the starry sky? The red-browed one couldn't help but complain. Although Immortal Lord Zhuyang looked distressed, he said nothing, mainly because he also didn't want to leave. The starry sky, the giant god mountain, the territory of the giant god clan. There were countless opportunities in the starry sky, but their strength was insufficient. In the starry sky, they'd be subordinates. In the northern spacetime, they were the bosses. No one liked being a subordinate. He was only at the peak of the 8th tribulation realm. There was no need to return to the starry sky so early. At least he wanted to reach the perfection of the 8th tribulation realm before considering returning to the clan to break through to the 9th tribulation realm. That way, it would be a triumphant return, and he'd be a big shot even in the starry sky. Shut up! Fuego yelled angrily. He believed in Feroce, but the current situation was indeed unfavorable for them. He might have to fall again. Last time, Feroce had revived him, so he had faith in Feroce. If they bet wrong, they would accept it. Seeing the gloomy faces of the few from the giant god clan, the Abyss Lord wanted to approach and extract information. However, despite internal issues, they presented a united front externally, ignoring the Abyss Lord. Sigh! The Abyss Lord couldn't help but sigh, glancing back at the abyss opposite the Xianxia secret realm. He had a feeling that something major was about to happen. Buzz! From the abyss of the Xianxia secret realm came a strange sound. Countless red eyes opened from within. The abyssal spacetime reacted similarly. The sudden appearance of these eyes drew the attention of many strong beings, causing them to retreat. The eyes revealed their forms from the darkness. The Decay Legion. It had devoured the essence of the entire mid-level spacetime. Even at his peak as a demigod, Barut couldn't fully absorb it. He had only absorbed a portion of the devoured power. The remaining power transformed into his Decay Legion. Countless bats unfurled their massive wings and rushed out of the abyss. Each bat beast had the combat power of the 7th tribulation realm, especially those from the Xianxia secret realm, where large groups of bat beasts even reached the 8th tribulation realm. The abyssal spacetime was thrown into chaos. Jian Wuxuang and Hu Qing were still managing. Although they hadn't yet found Barut himself, dealing with the bats wasn't an issue. These bats were formed from the essence of the mid-level spacetime. Naturally, they were also part of the northern spacetime's lifeforms. Their divine power reached up to 20 million at most. Hu Qing stopped deducing. Let's leave here while the devouring power of the abyss hasn't reached its peak. Jian Wushuang was growing anxious. After searching around and not finding any trace of Barut, they were now faced with an increasing number of bats in the abyss. Barut was likely devouring the entire essence of the mid-level spacetime. At this point, not only could they not find him, but even if they did, they wouldn't be a match for him. It had reached an unstoppable stage. The only option left was to escape. As long as the green hills remain, there will be wood to burn. But Hu Qing was still hesitant. He had already deduced a way out. That path seemed to be related to time. As long as they waited, they could break through. Forget it. Let's get out of here first. Jian Wushuang immediately used cosmic traversal, pulling Hu Qing along as they began to flee. They paid no heed to the bats and wild beasts. But as they prepared to escape, a black mist surged out from the abyss. The black mist instantly filled the entire Niantian's secret realm, transforming into a gigantic human face. Coming and going as you please. Isn't that underestimating me too much? Barut's voice echoed from the mist-filled sky. Jian Wushuang halted not by choice, but because a barrier blocked their path. Whoosh! In the divine domain, divine power was once again unrestrained. He looked up at the sky, his tone weakening slightly as he spoke. Barut, aren't you afraid of Realm King? He was still trying to use Realm King to intimidate his opponent. Little did he know, even Realm King had to seek reinforcements against Barut. Ha ha! Upon hearing this threat, Barut laughed wildly. A Realm King without his true body, what is he worth? Barut emerged from the black mist, wielding a broken sword blade, speaking arrogantly. I dared to come to your northern spacetime because I never feared him. As he finished speaking, the spacetime of the Niantian secret realm was torn open. A fat and a thin figure, one blue and one white, appeared in the secret realm. The fat one, touching his nose, just happened to hear Barut's words. Is that so? The newcomer was the Realm King, and the white-faced child beside him was naturally the great Realm King's disciple, Jingsu. Speaking of which, Jingsu and Wu Zhuo were of the same generation. All were disciples of Realm King, yet the differences were so vast. One was at a 7th tribulation, another was a demigod. Even a universe master at the 9th tribulation, upon reaching the limit, could not become a demigod. It required not only opportunity but also personal perseverance. Those who reached the level of a demigod were not weaker than true gods of spacetime. Of course, this referred to their combat strength. For instance, after Danbao perfected the life secret technique and cultivated life divine power, transitioning to life divine power might give him the combat strength of a demigod. The relationship between divine position and combat strength was not significant. It was just that cultivation was much more convenient for those with divine positions compared to ordinary cultivators. Realm Kings, being spacetime gods, naturally had innate physiques suitable for cultivation, along with endless opportunities and treasures. However, how far they could go was unpredictable. Take the Northern Realm King, for example. He could be considered the weakest among the 5 great Realm Kings. Even his true self was gone. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been oppressed by various external strongmen. Except for Mieshang. As a true god of the starry sky, Mieshang was on the same level as the Realm King. Crucially, Mieshang had existed much longer than the Realm King. When the starry sky was first formed, there were no 4 subsidiary spacetimes, nor the Realm God continent. At that time, Mieshang was born, perfected the power of death, and later refined the death divine power to its peak. His true self's combat strength probably surpassed that of demigod cultivators. He stood above ordinary cultivators. Only gods of the same kind in the starry sky could match Mieshang. Hu Qing was startled when he saw the Realm King appear. The path to survival was indeed the Realm King. The method he deduced to break the predicament, which was related to time, made sense now. It required waiting for reinforcements. Now that the Realm King had arrived, the key to breaking the predicament had also arrived. Senior Realm King. Jian Wushuang was also very happy to see Realm King appear. He had no solutions left here and could only rely on Realm King to save the day. Mainly because Bharat had a divine domain, otherwise he could still fight. Now, with Bharat's true self and the divine domain devouring the mid-level spacetime, his divine power had likely reached an astonishing level. No matter how strong he and Hu Qing were, it was difficult to defeat the opponent. Realm King pressed his hand down and said calmly, "I'll explain later. Let's deal with this little fellow first." Bringing Jing Su along, Realm King was naturally confident. If it were other demigod powerhouses, he might still worry, but Jing Su was a disciple of the Great Realm King and had received the Great Realm King's instructions, naturally holding a trump card against Bharat. "Deal with me." Bharat was taken aback, as if hearing a great joke, and laughed wildly. "Just with you? A Realm King without a true self? You want to deal with me?" The sudden appearance of the Realm King indeed surprised him. He had sealed spacetime, and it was strange that the other party could forcefully enter. This was his divine domain, and theoretically he was the god here. He didn't expect the Realm King could still enter. Even though Realm King was the master of the northern spacetime, he couldn't break his domain. The divine domain. It controlled the entire Xianxia secret realm. It could allow the life forms within its range to escape the constraints of life divine power, achieving maximum performance. This ability surpassed Realm King's scope. It also indirectly reflected the uniqueness of the divine domain. This was Bharat's confidence. After losing his true self, the Realm King also lost his so-called dignity. Being mocked by a Tribulation Realm powerhouse without an origin source didn't anger him. He just calmly replied, "I indeed lack that ability, but someone can." He slowly turned and looked at Jing Su. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing also turned their gaze to the person behind Realm King. A kid. Bharat outwardly appeared calm and slightly disdainful, but inwardly he was assessing the other party. The person who could make Northern Realm King so confident was certainly not ordinary. Within his divine domain, he couldn't see through the other's depth, only feeling that the power was similar to his peak period. Jian Wushuang also scrutinized closely but didn't find anything special, so he turned to Hu Qing and asked via voice transmission, "This person should not be a powerhouse of our northern spacetime, but I wonder about his strength. He's not Bharat's opponent." "Not his opponent?" Jian Wushuang was surprised, not expecting Hu Qing to say it so directly. He then asked, "What did you notice?" Hu Qing shook his head and replied, "Just a hunch. My intuition tells me that he's not Bharat's opponent. He might have some treasure to counter Bharat, but I still don't think highly of him. The divine domain of the Xianxia secret realm is the most unique treasure I've ever seen." This kind of deduction wasn't usually accurate, and Hu Qing wouldn't easily mention it under normal circumstances. But this time, her decisiveness surprised Jian Wushuang and made him more vigilant. Actually, Hu Qing was right. The uniqueness of the divine domain was evident to them all. It could isolate the life levels of the northern spacetime. Within the divine domain, it was like a miniature realm god continent. Without any restrictions, it was the divine domain. It was similar to the universe sea of the Wanlu divine tree, except that no one could control Wanlu. But Bharat could control the divine domain and use it as his own origin source. His power was beyond their imagination. "Be careful. If things go wrong, we should escape." Jian Wushuang transmitted his thoughts silently, retreating to the back of Realm King, preparing to observe the battle. "No, if we join forces, we still have a chance." Hu Qing's eyes showed a fighting spirit, and she clenched her fists. Jian Wushuang was a bit puzzled. In the current situation, how could he make a move? It was impossible to attack Bharat. Even if the two of them joined forces, it would only force Bharat to make one more move at most. Were they supposed to use someone like Jing Su as a shield? Hu Qing turned to stare at him, transmitting her thoughts. "Brother Wushuang, although this divine domain is special, we are also within it. It is not as simple as the origin source dojo. If it were, we wouldn't have any chance. But the divine domain is different from the origin source dojo in one aspect. We are not restricted here. But that aspect can be controlled by the opponent. Jian Wushuang immediately retorted. Earlier, Hu Qing's own attack was easily blocked by Barut. Barut reduced Hu Qing's divine power and increased his own. If he could truly do anything within the divine domain, he would have absorbed all the foundations of the middle spacetime long ago. But he hasn't done that. Instead, he created those desolate beasts. I guess Barut's decay divine body cannot bear the foundations of the middle spacetime. This is our opportunity. Hu Qing continued to explain. As long as we unleash our divine power and rush into the abyss, using divine power and origin source freely, the more we give the divine domain to devour, the greater Barut's burden will be. Why didn't I think of that? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. Such a simple principle, and he had not thought of it. In this way, with his and Hu Qing's divine power, they could bring infinite power to the abyss. He didn't know how much foundation Hu Qing had, but this kind of deduction wasn't usually accurate, and Hu Qing wouldn't easily mention it under normal circumstances. But this time, her decisiveness surprised Jian Wushuang and made him more vigilant. Actually, Hu Qing was right. The uniqueness of the divine domain was evident to them all. It could isolate the life levels of the northern spacetime. Within the divine domain, it was like a miniature realm god continent. Without any restrictions, it was the divine domain. It was similar to the universe sea of the Wanlu divine tree, except that no one could control Wanlu. But Barut could control the divine domain and use it as his own origin source. His power was beyond their imagination. Be careful. If things go wrong, we should escape. Jian Wushuang transmitted his thoughts silently, retreating to the back of Realm King, preparing to observe the battle. No, if we join forces, we still have a chance. Hu Qing's eyes showed a fighting spirit, and he clenched his fists. Jian Wushuang was a bit puzzled. In the current situation, how could he make a move? It was impossible to attack Barut. Even if the two of them joined forces, it would only force Barut to make one more move at most. Were they supposed to use someone like Jing Su as a shield? Hu Qing turned to stare at him, transmitting his thoughts. Brother Wushuang, although this divine domain is special, we are also within it. It is not as simple as the origin source Dao arena. If it were, we wouldn't have any chance. But the divine domain is different from the origin source Dao arena in one aspect. We are not restricted here. But that aspect can be controlled by the opponent. Jian Wushuang immediately retorted. Earlier, Hu Qing's own attack was easily blocked by Barut. Barut reduced Hu Qing's divine power and increased his own. If he could truly do anything within the divine domain, he would have absorbed all the foundations of the mid-level spacetime long ago. But he hasn't done that. Instead, he created those desolate beasts. I guess Barut's decay divine body cannot bear the foundations of the mid-level spacetime. This is our opportunity. Hu Qing continued to explain. As long as we unleash our divine power and rush into the abyss, using divine power and origin source freely, the more we give the divine domain to devour, the greater Barut's burden will be. Why didn't I think of that? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. Such a simple principle, and he had not thought of it. In this way, with his and Hu Qing's divine power, they could bring infinite power to the abyss. He didn't know how much foundation Hu Qing had, but his origin source Starry Sky contained infinite power. Now, 3 universes were already complete, not losing to any of the middle-level spacetime tributaries. Spacetime was higher than the universe. But it also depended on what kind of universe and what kind of spacetime river it was. If it was the tributaries of the lower stream, where time was extremely chaotic and space was not as vast as the universe, couldn't compare with Jian Wushuang's perfect universe at all. Even the middle spacetime rivers couldn't compare. His perfect universe alone could rival those tributaries. 3 complete universes, erupting together and letting the abyss devour them at will, were enough to rival the entire mid-level spacetime. Hu Qing's original self might not have enough depth, but his future self was definitely not weaker than him. The two indeed had a chance to fill this abyss. Now they just waited for the experts brought by Realm King to make their move. Jian Wushuang, do not be afraid, it will be resolved soon. Realm King held his head high, very confident, and shouted at Jingsu, take action! Buzz! The aura that shook the divine domain instantly surged. Jingsu's small frame instantly transformed into a size of 1,000,000 miles, like a god or demon, and his face turned ferocious. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but exclaim, he's not of the human race? Heh heh. Realm King introduced, Jingsu is a strong member of the Nakamon clan in the Starry Sky. Not a human race expert, but do not underestimate him. His power is even more terrifying than Qi Zhouxiao, whom you encountered before. This did not need Realm King to say, as Jian Wushuang could already see it. The aura of Qi Zhouxiao in the past could at least allow him to estimate how much divine power he had. However, after Jingsu erupted with such a terrifying aura, he could not see through it. He was definitely an existence surpassing 30 million divine power. Jingsu's towering figure, with 6 arms, each holding a broken spear, roared, Barut, I am ordered by the Great Realm King to take your life. Great Realm King. Barut waved the decay blade in his hand, not showing the slightest fear, and coldly said, then come on. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure also transformed into a size of 1,000,000 miles, with divine power reaching over 30 million as well. He had returned to his former peak, the form of a demigod. The battle between the two could be said to be the ultimate simplicity of the Tao, without any apparent difference, but each strike's power was so pure. They had reached the pinnacle of cultivation. Jian Wushuang, watching from the side, couldn't help but exclaim, worthy of being a demigod. The purity of this power is almost on par with a true god. The power of a true god. In fact, the Tao was the same. For example, the life force Jian Wushuang possessed, Danbao also had it, and it was even stronger than Jian Wushuang's. In the northern spacetime, Danbao's life force was like the sky, the true perfection, the strongest life force. The life force Jian Wushuang used, although it also came from his starry sky origin source, was not as strong as Danbao's, because he was not a god. At this moment, the battle between Jingsu and Barut, using divine power and the power of decay, had reached the divine realm. Realm King stroked his beard and commented, Tisk, there is still a bit of a gap after all. A demigod. After all, it was just a demigod. To call it a god was merely a term. It was just some cultivators who had reached perfection. They were already at the end of the cultivation road, and ahead was the true god. But the god positions were limited. To break this limit was like breaking the supreme law rule. Lord Realm King, what is the difference between this demigod and the titled demigod of the past? Jian Wushuang was somewhat puzzled. He had heard Danbao say before that they could be helped to become demigods. At that time, he thought it was just a title, nothing great, and preferred to walk his own path, so he didn't delve into it. But now, seeing the demigod experts in action, he regretted it a bit. The battle between Jingsu and Barut could not be decided in a short time. With nothing else to do, Realm King began to explain the path of cultivation to Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. You are familiar with the general realms of cultivators, from mortals to the so-called immortal beings, merging the understood Tao into the origin source to cross into the Emperor realm, then to the Universe Master and the Tribulation realm. If you divide it carefully, each space-time or even each universe is different. But it was very simple when explained by Realm King. The mortal realm, according to the path Jian Wushuang had walked, was below the immortal realm. Then came the Emperor realm. His origin source starry sky contained infinite power. Now, 3 universes were already complete, not losing to any of the middle spacetime tributaries. Spacetime was higher than the universe. But it also depended on what kind of universe and what kind of spacetime river it was. If it was the tributaries of the lower stream, where time was extremely chaotic and space was not as vast as the universe, couldn't compare with Jian Wushuang's perfect universe at all. Even the middle spacetime rivers couldn't compare. His perfect universe alone could rival those tributaries. 3 complete universes, erupting together and letting the abyss devour them at will, were enough to rival the entire mid-level spacetime. Hu Qing's original self might not have enough depth, but his future self was definitely not weaker than him. The two indeed had a chance to fill this abyss. Now they just waited for the experts brought by Realm King to make their move. Jian Wushuang, do not be afraid, it will be resolved soon. Realm King held his head high, very confident, and shouted at Jingsu, take action! Buzz! The aura that shook the divine domain instantly surged. Jingsu's small frame instantly transformed into a size of 1,000,000 miles, like a god or demon, and his face turned ferocious. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but exclaim, he's not of the human race? Heh heh. Realm King introduced, Jingsu is a strong member of the Nakamon clan in the Starry Sky, not a human race expert, but do not underestimate him. His power is even more terrifying than Qi Zhouxiao, whom you encountered before. This did not need Realm King to say, as Jian Wushuang could already see it. The aura of Qi Zhouxiao in the past could at least allow him to estimate how much divine power he had. However, after Jingsu erupted with such a terrifying aura, he could not see through it. He was definitely an existence surpassing 30 million divine power. Jingsu's towering figure, with 6 arms, each holding a broken spear, roared, Barut, I am ordered by the Great Realm King to take your life. Great Realm King. Barut waved the decay blade in his hand, not showing the slightest fear, and coldly said, then come on. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure also transformed into a size of 1,000,000 miles, with divine power reaching over 30 million as well. He had returned to his former peak, the form of a demigod. The battle between the two could be said to be the ultimate simplicity of the Tao, without any apparent difference, but each strike's power was so pure. They had reached the pinnacle of cultivation. Jian Wushuang, watching from the side, couldn't help but exclaim, worthy of being a demigod. The purity of this power is almost on par with a true god. The power of a true god. In fact, the Tao was the same. For example, the life force Jian Wushuang possessed, Danbao also had it, and it was even stronger than Jian Wushuang's. In the northern spacetime, Danbao's life force was like the sky, the true perfection, the strongest life force. The life force Jian Wushuang used, although it also came from his starry sky origin source, was not as strong as Danbao's. Because he was not a god. At this moment, the battle between Jingsu and Barut, using divine power and the power of decay, had reached the divine realm. Realm King stroked his beard and commented, Tisk tisk, there is still a bit of a gap after all. A demigod. After all, it was just a demigod. To call it a god was merely a term. It was just some cultivators who had reached perfection. They were already at the end of the cultivation road, and ahead was the true god. But the god positions were limited. To break this limit was like breaking the supreme rule. Lord Realm King, what is the difference between this demigod and the titled demigod of the past? Jian Wushuang was somewhat puzzled. He had heard Danbao say before that they could be helped to become demigods. At that time, he thought it was just a title, nothing great, and preferred to walk his own path, so he didn't delve into it. But now, seeing the demigod experts in action, he regretted it a bit. The battle between Jingsu and Barut could not be decided in a short time. With nothing else to do, Realm King began to explain the path of cultivation to Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. You are familiar with the general realms of cultivators, from mortals to the so-called immortal celestial beings, merging the understood Tao into the origin source to cross into the Emperor realm, then to the Universe Master and the Tribulation realm. If you divide it carefully, each space-time or even each universe is different. But it was very simple when explained by Realm King. The mortal realm, according to the path Jian Wushuang had walked, was below the evolving celestial. Then came the Emperor realm.